Chapter 100. At night, the school was less noisy and quieter than during the day. On the 5th floor of the teaching block, the classroom of Grade 12 Class 1 was a little more solemn. The only sound that could be heard in the classroom was the pen tip gliding across the paper. All of the students' gazes were focused as they concentrated on their own test papers. Yi Qian's pen seemed to move faster than the other students. He wrote down the answer almost without thinking. There was no hesitation or pause. It was as if he was taking notes in class. There was no sense of stagnation at all. The two provincial first middle school teachers scanned the top students in Fujian Town Middle School. A total of 62 students from Grade 2 and Grade 3 had signed up for the competition. After this round of preliminaries, it was estimated that half of them would be eliminated. There was only one reason why Principal Chow chose the second day of the midterm exam for the second round of selections: to strengthen the competition. They needed to know which students performed consistently in the 4 days of exams. They also needed to know which students had stage fright or were unable to persevere in the middle of the exam. If they stood out in this competition, then Ms. Song, who had walked to Yi Qian's side, smiled. No wonder Principal Chen didn't give face to Ms. Ku. It was unbelievable that such an outstanding student was suppressed by his own form teacher. She had been teaching for more than 20 years, and this was the first time she had encountered such a situation. After standing there for less than 3 minutes, Ms. Song's eyes narrowed slightly. Then she quietly walked to Mr. Zhu, who taught mathematics in the top class of the province's first middle school, and whispered, "Mr. Zhu, go take a look at her." To be able to attract the attention of a teacher on the spot, one had to either be cheating or a top student. Mr. Zhu was the only teacher in the province who had participated in the National Mathematical Olympiad questions. He had also taken students overseas to participate in mathematical Olympiad competitions. When he walked to Yi Qian's desk, his legs seemed to have grown roots and he couldn't move. The two teachers took turns standing in front of a student's desk. They had inadvertently attracted the attention of some students. Ying was one of them. Seeing this, the light in her beautiful eyes was like dirty well water, full of gloominess and coldness. The ballpoint pen in her hand seemed to be about to be broken in half. She was so strong that the veins on the back of her hand could be clearly seen. No matter how attentive Yi Jian was, she couldn't ignore that cold gaze that seemed to be stained with dirty water. He raised his eyes indifferently, and his gaze seemed to inadvertently sweep across the front. His gaze paused for a few seconds on Yi Ying's face, who was a row away, and he returned her a cold smile. Her smile was so dazzling, and it even contained disdain towards him. Yi Ying had already gritted her teeth, and the gloominess in her beautiful eyes deepened. She glared fiercely at Yi Qian. Just as she was about to lose control of her emotions, she seemed to have thought of something. She took a deep breath, bit her tongue to control her emotions, and looked away. No, I can't let Yi Qian affect me. Her father was right. When she didn't have the ability to deal with Yi Qian, the first thing she had to learn was to endure. Yi Jian, who had seen her reaction, lowered her eyes, and a hint of coldness appeared in her dark, watery eyes. Yi Ying was able to succeed in her previous life not only because of her own ability, but also because of Yi Zhifan, who gave her advice. "You don't know the last question?" She hesitated for a long time, and this made Mr. Zhu, who was standing next to her, anxious. "This question is a little difficult, but it's all learned in the second year of middle school. Think carefully." Chapter 101. The last question, geometry, was from the Provincial Math Olympiad 2 years ago. It was difficult, but not difficult. Yi Qian did not expect her teacher to be so anxious when she exchanged glances with Yi Ying. She put her pen down again and wrote down the steps she had in her mind. Finally, she wrote down the correct answer. She had just written down the answer when the paper in front of her was taken away. The teacher's voice came from above, "Sit here and don't move. You can leave after I correct it." Being the first to hand in the paper always gave the other students a lot of pressure. Gao Yang, who was sitting at the back, already pursed his lips. Did she finish it so quickly? Or did she get caught cheating? No, that couldn't be right. If she was caught cheating, the teacher wouldn't be so agitated, and she wouldn't be sitting quietly in the classroom. Then, she must have finished it. Gao Yang could not hide the surprise in his cold eyes. He frowned and looked in the direction of Ying. Seeing that the girl he admired was focused on the questions and was not affected at all, his frown eased. Teacher Zhu, who was marking the papers at the podium, was already cheering in her heart. She took very little time and got it 100% correct. No wonder Principal Chow had to come personally. This town's middle school was really talented. The rest of the students were still in the middle of the exam, but Teacher Zhu had already finished marking Yi Qian's paper. Not bad, you can leave the exam room. There was no mention of the score, but it could be seen from Yi Qian's expression and words that she had done well. She was in a hurry to find Principal Chen. She politely said, "Goodbye, teacher." Then she picked up the only ballpoint pen she had brought into the classroom, got up, and left quickly. Behind her, Yi Qian's footsteps and expression did not change in the slightest, no matter how surprised she was being. Today, she was not just here for the exam. The most important thing had not been done yet. Is this a gift from Captain Xia? In the office, Principal Chen held a long and thin silver wire made of a special material that shimmered coldly under the light. Soft, tough. This special material was really rare. Why would he give her a gift without any reason? Why would he give the girl a weapon from the suspect's hands? Not to mention the lass, even this old man wanted to know. Since such a good thing has been given, just accept it. Wouldn't it be a waste of Captain Xia's good intentions if we return it? Principal Chen chuckled and gestured for Yi Qian to reach out and wrap the silver wire around Yi Qian's slender and fair wrist. This is a good thing. Take it since I've given it to you. It was a good treasure. Even if it was a bracelet, it would still be beautiful. Most importantly, it's not against the law. Yi Qian was dumbfounded. He stammered, This isn't power. Ha ha ha, silly girl. Principal Chen saw the unconcealable surprise on her little face and the faint worry in her dark eyes. His laughter grew louder. Girl, this is from Captain Xia. Keep it well. You don't have to worry about anything else. If Principal Chen said he would accept it, then he would definitely accept it. She replied with a smile, Then I'll accept it. I'm not afraid of being laughed at, but I really like it. I'm just afraid that if I accept it, it will affect Captain Xia. So I came to ask you for a peace of mind. Clever girl. Principal Chen's laughter became even louder. Little girl, you're right. After laughing, he asked about the exam. Yi Qian arched her eyebrows and smiled faintly. Her eyes were bright and sparkling. Don't worry. I always mean what I say. Chapter 102. What she had said and done, as well as what others had said and done. She remembered all of it. Since Principal Chow was still around, Yi Qian had to complete tonight's training by himself. After bidding farewell to Principal Chen, she jogged out of school and rushed to the recruit camp. Gao Yang, who was pushing his bicycle, saw a slender figure jogging past the yellow lights of the school gate and disappearing into the night without stopping. It was Yi Qian. 2 minutes later, the person he was waiting for. Ying jogged over. Unlike Yi Qian's swift and decisive movements, she was like a flower that needed to be cared for. She had to pause for a moment before continuing. She had a heart problem, so running and strenuous activities were not suitable for her. What kind of person is Yi Qian normally? After Gao Yang, who was sitting on the back seat of the bicycle with Ying, had driven some distance away, the young man's low, hoarse, and slightly puzzled voice could be heard in the cool night breeze. I didn't notice any strong points in her before, but now it seems like she's been hiding it on purpose. He didn't have any other intentions, He was just asking his own question. Yi Ying's expression changed. She gripped his shirt tightly and smiled. I don't know, I've never been on good terms with her. You'll have to ask her yourself to see if she's hiding them. What's going on? Gao Yang had been paying more and more attention to Yi Qian these past few days. Forget it, I'm just asking. He answered indifferently and didn't ask any more questions. She had been kicked. She had been beaten. She had to leave a deeper impression. From Monday to Wednesday, Yi Jian's figure would appear in the classroom of grade 12 class 1 for every exam in the 3 subjects of mathematics, physics, and chemistry. After 3 days, it had caused quite a stir in the entire grade. Bad rumors began to spread around the school. The general idea was, bad students make more trouble. Did you hear that? Bad students make more trouble. I have to add, ugly people make more trouble. As soon as Yi Qian entered the classroom, he heard He Jiamin gloating over his misfortune. He could tell that she was deliberately saying it for him to hear. Tan Wei frowned and tugged at He Jiamin's sleeve. Lower your voice. Why should I speak softly? I'm telling the truth. He Jiamin, who had finally vented her anger, would not let go of the opportunity to step on Yi Qian. She stood up, raised her chin and said provocatively, if you want to make a fool of yourself, then don't blame the bystanders for talking too much. When Jiasin heard this, she was furious. She rolled up her sleeves and was about to rush over. He Jiamin, you're really capable. If you have the ability, go ahead and do it yourself. If she could go anywhere, Zhang Na said airily. Only incompetent people would go around making trouble. Yi Qian, who was standing in the middle, smiled and patted their shoulders. His gaze was straight and cold. He said with a faint smile, do you know why I don't want to talk to a certain someone? It's just a feeling. If I look at her for too long, I'll have nightmares for days. It's true that ugly people make more trouble. Others had already bullied him. If he didn't return the favor, how could he? In the land of etiquette, he naturally had to return the favor. When He Jiamin heard Yi Qian call her ugly, her face instantly twisted. She pounced over as if she was going to bite him. Yi Qian, I'll let you be smug. I'll let you be smug. Are you sure you want to fight? Yi Qian walked over. His cold gaze had a hint of ruthlessness. He smiled and said, I realize that you have a bad memory. That's good too. Let's fight and you'll remember. Chapter 103. Yi Ying, who had been listening for a long time, looked gloomy. She grabbed He Jiamin, who had rushed out, and whispered, Class is about to start. Do you want to be scolded by the teacher? Oh no, I almost forgot that Yi Qian is quite good at fighting. At the mention of the past, He Jiamin, who was arrogant just a second ago, was defeated the next second. Her eyes flickered as she returned to her seat dejectedly. When the surrounding students saw this, they more or less looked down on He Jiamin. Not only did she bully her own classmates, but she was also as timid as a mouse. They didn't know where she got the courage to go against Yi Qian. At noon, the broadcast announced the names of the students who had been selected for the competition. When Yi Jian's name was broadcasted again, the sound of people gasping could be heard everywhere in the school. Yi Qian from Year 2's Class 2 even applied for English. English was the weak point of Town Middle School. Could she do it? Don't puff yourself up at your own cost. Teacher Huang, the English teacher who was eating in the staff cafeteria, let out a long sigh when she heard Yi Qian's name. Whether she would succeed or not, she didn't know. But at least one of the 2 classes she taught in Year 2 had applied. Yi Qian applied for mathematics, physics, and chemistry, but it didn't cause much of a reaction. But when they found out that she applied for English, the reaction was huge. As long as there were students around, they would definitely hear that the most discussed topic was Yi Qian. As for the boys, the most discussed topic was Yi Qian's appearance. When it came to Yi Qian's appearance, no one said that she was ugly. I didn't realize she was pretty before. Now that I look at her, She's getting prettier. Her face is small and her facial features are exquisite. More importantly, have you noticed that she has an indescribable aura about her? Hey, you guys noticed it too. I thought I was mistaken. I just thought. Did she wear our school uniform incorrectly? She shouldn't be wearing the uniform. Gao Yang, who was listening to his classmates' irrelevant conversations, put down his spoon and sneered. That's not what we're concerned about. Do you think she can do English? Ha ha ha, Gao Yang, English isn't the point. The important thing is the beauty. The boy laughed heartily. Seeing that all the girls in the class were sneaking glances at him, he sighed and said sadly, You have a beauty by your side. How can you understand our thoughts? Gao Yang was already pursing his lips. English? Could she do Yi Qian? After a while, he snorted coldly. Fine, let her make a fool of herself. Then she will know what it means to act according to one's ability. Yi Qian, who even the English teacher did not have high hopes for, ate his lunch without any pressure. Was it difficult for him to take the English test at night? Would he be sad about those unfamiliar, tongue-twisting medical books with especially long words? As for speaking, she had been a top tour guide for international tours, so speaking wasn't difficult for her. At this moment, the students' secret discussions about Yi Qian were already out in the open. The moment they saw him, they said, Which Yi Qian from class 2 last time, Yi Qian used her supermemory to shock more than 30 students. This time, she used another method to create a storm in the school. Her name was already being passed around by the students for the entire Thursday afternoon. The students who had seen Yi Qian's supermemory felt that it might not be difficult for her. When they heard their classmates mention Yi Qian in an extremely sarcastic tone, they would also stand up for him. However, in the end, they chose to wait and see. Chapter 104. When Ying heard that Yi Qian was participating in the English competition, she chuckled. You overestimate yourself. She believed that Yi Qian could do well in other subjects. But for English, the sun would rise from the west if she was not good at it. There were so many top students out there, and she even had to learn English. They were just waiting for her to make a fool of herself. As the deputy mayor, Yi Zhifan had a great influence on Yi Ying. She was slowly learning how to plan ahead. But for Yi Qian, there were plenty of people waiting for her to make a fool of herself. It didn't matter if Yi Qian was there or not. Yi Qian walked into the classroom and found her seat, waiting for the exam papers to be handed out. The other 9 students, including Gao Yang, looked at Yi Qian subtly. The 9 of them were the top students in English in the 2nd and 3rd year. Yi Qian from the 2nd year class. Where did she get the confidence to even sign up for English? Gao Yang, who was sitting in the corner, saw this and pursed his lips into a straight line. Why did she have to embarrass herself in school? So many students were secretly laughing at her. Wouldn't it be better to keep a low profile? The teacher hadn't come in yet. Gao Yang stood up and walked behind a girl. Although his voice was cold, he was polite. Hello, can I exchange seats with you? There are 10 people in the exam, so you can sit anywhere. Yi Qian didn't turn around. It didn't matter who sat behind her. If you don't know how to do it, keep it. When the exam papers were handed out, Gao Yang's low and cold voice sounded. I'll give you the answer after I'm done. No matter what, she had to pass this test first. She couldn't let those talkative students say anything bad. Yi Qian was a girl after all. In front of her, Yi Qian, who had already started writing, stopped. She turned her head and looked at Gao Yang, who seemed to be planning for her. She smiled faintly and said, You're confident in English because you've lived abroad, right? I'm helping you, Yi Qian. It didn't sound like he meant anything else, but it made him feel a little uncomfortable. I am indeed confident. Yi Qian raised his eyebrows and smiled. His dark eyes shone like stars as he said, What a coincidence. I'm also very confident in myself. I'm sorry, but I really don't care for your so-called help. You! Gao Yang's handsome face immediately changed. His eyes were cold as he stared at the figure who was already sitting upright. Yi Qian, don't be ungrateful. Tisk, tsk, what should I do? She didn't know what was good for her. With the sound of the tape turning, the first question, listening, began. No matter how angry Gao Yang was, he could only give up. After the listening test was over, Yi Qian's pen flew across the paper. When it came to the last reading question, Yi Qian directly handed the paper to Teacher Song and politely said, "Goodbye." He left the 9 students who were still taking the exam. He didn't return to the classroom. Instead, he went straight to Jiasen's dormitory to pick up his bag and leave the school. Tonight's training was to train the arm's stability. Yi Qian, who didn't even put down his bag, immediately rushed to the training room. At this time, Principal Chen had already been waiting for a long time. The results of the exam were never the focus of their conversation. Principal Chen, who was holding a string of bells in his hand, gestured for Yi Qian to reach out his hand. Put 5 kilograms of weight on your wrist for 30 minutes. Every time the bell rings, the time will be stacked for 10 minutes. As a sniper, the closer they got to the end, the crueler the training became. Chapter 105. In the morning, you'll be in the grass. At night, you'll be in the desert. The next day, you'll be in the snow forest. No matter where you are, you'll need to have an extremely stable arm to hold up your sniper rifle. You'll need to lock onto the crosshairs of your target and fire with a bang. Principal Chen not only had a cruel training plan for how to train Yi Qian into a top-notch sniper, but at the same time, he would optimize the training according to Yi Qian's own conditions. Women were weaker than men in terms of strength, but Principal Chen would never allow that to happen. The soldiers he trained had to be better than men in all aspects, because on the battlefield, the enemy would never show mercy just because you were a woman. On the contrary, once a female soldier was captured, what awaited her was even crueler and more inhumane torture. Starting from the body, all the way to the depths of her soul, she would be brutally tortured by the enemy until she was neither human nor ghost. After choosing this path, as long as he thought about what would happen if he fell into the hands of the enemy, then he would have to accept the cruelty of the day. A metal ball weighed 5 kilograms. Both her hands weighed 5 kilograms. Yi Qian could clearly feel her hands sinking under the weight of the metal balls. Raise. Principal Chen's stern voice came from the training room. Both hands parallel to your shoulders. Maintain an angle of 90 degrees under your armpits. The silver bell is not allowed to make a sound for half an hour. 1, 2, 3. Begin. From this moment onwards, Yi Qian's sniper training had advanced from beginner to intermediate. The silver bell on her wrist was strung together with extremely thin fish wire. It was so light that even a small breeze could blow it and make a clear ringing sound. 10 minutes later, Yi Qian was already gritting her teeth. Fine sweat seeped out of her forehead. The metal balls in her hands seemed to be getting heavier. They were so heavy that her hands were about to sink down uncontrollably. Sniper training required silence. Every time this happened, the training room would become a restricted area. Even Battalion Commander Yang could not enter and leave as he pleased. Girl, right now your left and right arms only weigh a total of 5 kilograms. If there comes a day when you're holding a 12-kilogram sniper rifle in your hands and still charging into enemy lines like a commando, are you sure you can do it? Divert your attention so that the burden in your heart doesn't exist. In Principal Chen's teachings, Yi Qian was like a small sapling, rooted in fertile soil, sprouting branches and leaves, growing strong day by day. His attention was no longer on the weights on his wrist. Instead, he cast his gaze at a certain spot in the training room. In his mind, he memorized the English test questions for tonight, starting from the listening test to the reading test. Principal Chen was always amazed by his amazing perseverance and talent. Even if they knew, they would still be amazed when they saw it again. She had to carry 5 kilograms of weights for half an hour on both her hands. She was not allowed to swing the silver bell even once. For a sniper who had just advanced from a beginner to an intermediate level, this was something that even a male soldier would find difficult to accomplish on the first try. But Yi Qian had done it. Sweat flowed down her elegant chin and seeped into her clothes like a waterline. Large patches of wet clothes were proof of how hard this slender girl worked. Principal Chen watched the time pass by with a gratified gaze. Once half an hour was up, he prepared to stop training. Going too far was as bad as not going far enough. Chapter 106. With little Ye's intelligence, there was nothing to worry about. She just needed to follow the original plan and train as usual. She removed the metal ball from her wrist. The sudden ease made her feel a little uncomfortable. Yi Qian shook her wrist and smiled without even wiping her sweat. If you didn't remind me, I really wouldn't have noticed that half an hour has passed. It was as if she had just gotten into a good mood and suddenly pulled away. She still felt a little empty. You're doing very well now. There's no need to rush. Principal Chen took out a bottle of medicinal oil and poured it into his palm. Stretch out your hand. It's not bad to be able to last for half an hour on your first try. The sudden weight on her wrist might seem fine now, but there would be repercussions later. Using the medicinal oil to promote blood circulation would reduce the repercussions. After the exam on Saturday, I'll go back to the village with you. You must learn from the old man. He's a first-rank sergeant major. You won't be able to learn all his skills in your lifetime. After the training, Principal Chen taught Yi Qian like a father. If you can apply what you learn, you'll benefit from it for a lifetime. Endure 5 kilograms of weight for 3 months. After 3 months, I'll increase the weight. You'll only stop when your hands can carry 20 kilograms. When he was able to walk as if he was flying while holding a 20-kilogram gun in his hand, and was able to lay down immediately to snipe the target, Yi Qian already had the reflexes of a top sniper. Yi Qian had always gritted his teeth and persevered. Hearing this, he smiled and said, 20 kilograms is the end. It's just the end of a phase. If you can continue, right? The medicinal oil was specially supplied by the army. When applied, it burned brightly and the effect was excellent. As long as you can persevere, you can. Principal Chen poured almost half the bottle and rubbed Yi Qian's wrist until it turned red. These 2 hands, I'm afraid you'll suffer a little in the exam tomorrow. The next day, when Yi Qian got out of bed, his hands were so sore that it was difficult to even hold a cup of water. Only then did he understand why Principal Chen said he would suffer a little in the exam. He applied a hot towel and sprayed a spray to relieve muscle soreness. Only then did he feel a little better. You didn't sleep well last night? The moment Jiasin entered the classroom, she didn't even return to her seat. Instead, she walked straight to Yi Qian, who didn't look too well. Why do you look so listless? It wasn't that he didn't sleep well, but his entire arm was aching unbearably. Yi Qian placed his arm on the table and said to her, "Come, give me a massage. The pain has gone all the way to my bones." There were no obvious external injuries, only soreness in his ligaments and muscles. If he hadn't applied the ointment last night, he probably wouldn't have been able to lift his head. You scared me to death. I thought you messed up on your English test last night. And Jiasin immediately started massaging. As she massaged, she asked softly, "How was it? How was your English test yesterday?" Yi Qian, who was making comfortable noises with his mouth, curled his lips into a smile. He closed his eyes slightly and replied, "When have I ever disappointed you? Just wait, there will be a surprise for you." Damn. And Jiasin almost jumped out of her seat. You're really something. Are you planning on doing a grand slam? Yi Qian raised his eyebrows and replied handsomely, "Why not? Although I don't take gossip to heart, I'm still annoyed by those mosquitoes buzzing around all day long. Shut their mouths and speak with your abilities. Chapter 107. If she spoke with her abilities, no matter how many mouths there were, she would be able to shut them up and prevent others from gossiping in the future. But then again, I have to say something. Don't you think the school is taking this competition very seriously? Hearing this, Unyielding, who was relieved, leaned closer and whispered, even the midterm exam was postponed. I'm afraid this competition is not going to be simple. Yiqian smiled but did not say anything. However, the way she looked at her was clear. Of course, it was not going to be simple. Principal Chen, who already knew about Yiqian's results, narrowed his eyes slightly. After a while, he said, "This child's goal is a little different, but she will definitely be willing to fight for the glory of the country. There's no choice. The competition is going on all over the country. Your school is not the only one who postponed the midterm exam. Other schools are doing the same." Principal Chow, who was always smiling, had a serious expression on his face. He said in a deep voice, "We failed 3 years ago. This time, we will not allow ourselves to fail again. There are only 12 student representatives in the country. Yiqian has a high chance of making it big." As of yesterday, there were a total of 6 students who scored a grand slam in the preliminary exam. Not only did Yiqian score a grand slam, but she also took the most time in the entire country. "Old Chen, you have to persuade Yiqian." From Principal Chow's expression and words, it was obvious that this competition was just as Unyielding had said. It was not going to be simple. Yiqian and Unyielding were not the only ones who felt it. Most of the students had their guesses. This was the first time they had encountered a competition where the midterm exam had to be postponed. During the exam, Yiqian handed in her papers a little slower than usual. Her hands were sore and she was indeed at a disadvantage. Seeing this, Yi Ying's lips curled into a contemptuous smile. How could she still perform normally after taking so many exams? As if. The invigilator stood beside Yiqian, who was concentrating on the exam. They would more or less pay attention to this girl, who was the talk of the town, to see if she was really capable. After 2 days of exams, the invigilators had an answer in their hearts. After the politics exam in the afternoon, all the students in the school began to compare their answers as if a burden had been lifted off their shoulders. Come. Let's compare our answers. I feel like I've made a lot of mistakes. I still have 2 fill-in-the-blank questions to do. I forgot the date and month. While the rest of the students were still comparing their answers, Yiqian's paper had already been graded and handed over to Principal Chen. Even Teacher Ku, the homeroom teacher, didn't have the chance to look at him. Yiqian, who was not used to the answers, was also dragged into the discussion. "Wow, you're right. I didn't even memorize it. Ying, you're amazing. Ying did well in the exam this time." He Jiamin, who copied a lot of her, was already praising her exaggeratedly. Then, she rolled her eyes in Yiqian's direction and chuckled mockingly. "Look at how arrogant some people are. Let's just wait for her to cry. Let her be proud. When the results are out she'll cry." He Jiamin didn't dare to mock her in public anymore, but behind her back she was even more scheming. "Did you see that? She's been taking exams these past 2 days. Every time she takes an exam, she shakes her hands. One look and you can tell that she doesn't know how to do it." Yi Ying, who saw this, didn't stop her. Instead, she calmly watched the situation develop. She didn't want to suppress Yiqian, but there would naturally be people who would stand up for her. Let's just wait and see. When the time comes, we'll talk about her until she's too ashamed to go to school. She'd better get out of school obediently. Chapter 108. Xie Sifeng chimed in, her voice thick with jealousy. "Let her know that she can't go around showing off just because her grades are a little better." At the same time the bell rang, Teacher Ku's heavy footsteps appeared at the classroom door. Seeing that the classroom was still in a mess even after the bell rang, she was furious. When her gaze swept over Yi Qian, her eyes revealed a disdainful sneer. Teacher Ku stomped to the podium, slammed the blackboard brush down, and pointed directly at He Jiamin, who was still talking loudly. He Jiamin, stand up. You made a mess of the exam, and you still have the cheek to shout? He Jiamin, who had been arrogant just a moment ago, instantly looked as if she had been hit by frost. Her face turned green, then white, and she stood rooted to the ground, not moving a single step. Get up here! She had hit the muzzle of the gun well. Her public resistance made Teacher Ku's face turn ashen. Stand there until school ends. Rebellion, rebellion. Both of them were rebelling. Where was the dignity of a teacher? Yi Qian glanced coldly at Teacher Ku, who was obviously trying to find fault with him. A trace of mockery flashed across his eyes. He sat there leisurely, enjoying the confrontation between the teacher and the student like a spectator. In the end, it was naturally He Jiamin who stood at the podium with a red face. Tomorrow, these students will come to school as usual for the final exam. When the names were read out, Yi Ying's name was the first to be called out. Teacher Ku also looked proud. There were a total of 7 students in the class, but Teacher Ku only called out the names of 5 students. Yi Qian and the boy who was taking the chemistry exam were not among them. Xie Sifeng laughed softly and said to her deskmate, "How embarrassing! If it were me, I would be too embarrassed to come to school." The meaning behind her words and laughter was clear. Mockery, indifference, and sarcasm could be heard in Xie Sifeng's laughter. He Jiamin, who had been standing with her head lowered, had already raised her head. Her eyes were full of schadenfreude. Embarrassing, how embarrassing! Now that the whole school knows, let's see how she can enter the school gates. Ying also lowered her eyebrows and smiled faintly. Ha ha, this is really interesting. This person doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. He even wants to learn from others and soar into the sky. I won't let you fall to your death. Yi Qian, who was sitting in his seat, was not affected by the mockery at all. He was calm and collected, and had the demeanor of a gentleman who stood aloof from the world. The night before, Principal Chen had said that he would go back to the village with her on Saturday. He had already told her that she didn't have to take the exam on Sunday. She left the school easily, but in Jiasen, Zhang Na, and Zhang Bin were worried. When Yi Qian came to school on Monday, he was greeted by people pointing at him as he walked. Very good. The whole school knew that she didn't take the exam on Sunday. That meant she had made a fool of herself and failed a single subject. When she entered the classroom, the ones who were worried about her were still her classmates who were on good terms with her. In the classroom, He Jiamin and Xie Sifeng's voices were even louder, especially when they saw Yi Qian walk in. Their laughter was as sharp and piercing as the birth of a fairy. Unfortunately, their laughter didn't last long. When Yi Qian's name didn't appear on Saturday, Teacher Ku's expression was a little smug. This time, when she entered the classroom, her face was as black as the bottom of a pot. She started scolding the moment she arrived, and she didn't stop for at least 10 minutes. Yi Qian, who had noticed the classroom door, stood up and said with a faint smile, "Teacher Ku, if you continue scolding like this, Principal Chen will probably get angry." Chapter 109. She was about to lash out at Yi Qian, but when she heard this, she turned her head and saw Principal Chen standing at the door with a cold expression. Teacher Ku was so flustered that her knees went weak. She forced a smile and said, "You're here. You're here for? I didn't come at the right time. Sorry to disturb Teacher Ku's lecture." Principal Chen replied faintly as he walked into the classroom. His intimidating gaze swept across the faces of all the students in Class 2. Finally, his gaze paused on Yi Ying, Xie Sifeng, and He Jiamin for a few seconds. Unity, love, harmony, and friendliness. You can see these words when you look up. But to my disappointment, I don't see these qualities shining like gold in some of the students in Class 2. As the principal, he naturally wouldn't mention who it was. However, whoever his gaze lingered on would know in their hearts. Yi Ying's face turned red. She was sensitive enough to know that when Principal Chen mentioned some of the students, she was one of them. Teacher Ku, you've been scolding them for so long. Some of the students might feel better, but to some of them, you're hurting them. After scolding the students, Principal Chen didn't give Teacher Ku any face at all. Since Teacher Ku doesn't want to announce the results of Class 2, then I'll do it on your behalf. We'll start from the 10th place. After scolding for so long, I'll let you take a breather. The last sentence made the nervous students laugh out loud. No one wanted to be scolded, but no one dared to stand up like Yi Qian and interrupt Teacher Ku's scolding. Starting from the 10th place, the students who heard the name heaved a long sigh of relief. At least they maintained their ranking. When it came to the top 3, when Yi Qian's name didn't appear, He Jimin, who was in 9th place, couldn't help but laugh. When Yi Ying was in 3rd place, her applause was louder than anyone else's. Her hands were red from clapping, but she didn't know that Yi Ying, who had always been in 1st and 2nd place, had already glared daggers at her countless times. Zhou Liao was in 2nd place, and the applause was even louder. Principal Chen didn't continue. Instead, he said to Teacher Ku, "Let Teacher Ku take the 1st place." Didn't she want to say it? Then, he would let her do it. Under his cold gaze, Teacher Ku, whose knees were weak, finally said the name she didn't want to say the most. 1st place, Yi Qian. Except for the essay, 5 marks were deducted. Full marks for every subject. The noisy classroom quieted down. The mocking laughter turned into gasps, and the mocking gazes turned into disbelief. Shock was written all over their youthful faces. The name of Yi Qian, who had scored full marks in all her classes, exploded in their minds like thunder. Full marks! Full marks! And Jiasin was so happy that she screamed. She even lost her composure and rushed out of her seat. She hugged Yi Qian and shouted, "Damn! Hold your head high, hold your head high!" A tidal wave of applause rang out in front of Yi Ying's pale face. It rang out in front of He Jimin, who was so shocked that her eyeballs were about to pop out of their sockets. It rang out in front of Xie Sifeng, who couldn't accept it and was stunned for a long time. When the homeroom teachers of the 2nd year announced the name of the 1st place in the midterm exam, all the strangeness disappeared and was replaced by shock. Yi Qian's results were like a slap to their faces. It made those who had mocked Yi Qian and were waiting for him to make a fool of himself lower their heads in shame. Chapter 110. 1st place in the entire cohort, 76 points higher than 2nd place, 78 points higher than 3rd place, 4th place. 80 points, 5th place. 82 points. Not only did she rank 1st, but she also showed the entire school the gap between the top 5 and the top 1. A gap that was as wide as a chasm, a gap that was difficult to cross. The students who had mocked her this week were so embarrassed that their faces were as red as if they were not wearing pants. They lowered their heads and did not say anything else. Amidst the thunderous applause, Principal Chen raised his hand to signal for the students to quiet down. When the classroom was so quiet that only the sound of shallow breathing could be heard, he continued with a smile. As for why Yi Qian did not participate in the provincial competition, it was not because she did not do well. It was because she did not need to take the exam again. After the exam, Yi Qian will go to the provincial high school for half a month of intensive closed-door training. Once she stands out, she will represent our country in the middle of July to participate in the World Mathematical Olympiad. If the results of 1st place in the cohort shock the students, then representing the country in the World Mathematical Olympiad was like a sudden clap of thunder, exploding the students until they were collectively stunned. "I'll go, I'll go! I'll go!" And Jiasin, who was so shocked that her eyeballs froze, murmured to herself. Then, she abruptly dug her ears, stood up stupidly, and asked Headmaster Chern, "Headmaster, the mathematical Olympiad you're talking about, is it the mathematical Olympiad that the top universities in the world are eyeing as long as you participate in it and don't get a ranking?" As a math enthusiast, Unjiasen had some understanding of this. Principal Chun, whose gaze fell on her, nodded approvingly. "This student seems to have understood it. That's right, it's the Olympiad that you know. The World Mathematical Olympiad is held once every 3 years, and all the participants are the top students in each country. As for Yi Qian, as long as she passes the national selection, she will be able to represent the country in battle." This time there was no applause, only shock. In the 2 school buildings, there were a total of 20 middle and intermediate classes. All the students were shocked by the news that their teacher had just announced. Represent the country in battle. Who would have thought of this? No one would have thought of this. Some students didn't even know there was such a competition. Yi Qian didn't even think about it. Compared to her classmates' shock, she frowned slightly and her expression became indifferent. His expression was calm, but his heart was a little anxious. If it weren't for the fact that they were still in class, she would have walked over and asked for an explanation. Training, what about her training? Wouldn't they fall behind? That's right, Yi Qian was considering her 4-year training plan, not the World Mathematical Olympiad. As the homeroom teacher, Teacher Ku looked at Principal Chen in disbelief. She looked at the principal, and then at Yi Qian. Could it be that she already knew? Thinking of this possibility, Teacher Ku felt a sharp pain in his heart. Even Teacher Ku was like this, let alone Yiying. Her beautiful eyes were so shocked that her eyeballs were about to fall out. The expression on her small face was so twisted that it looked ferocious. Go abroad and participate in the World Olympiad. What right did she have? What right did she have? Just because he got first place in the midterm exam? Just because he solved the questions in the provincial first school, he thought he could represent the country in the competition? Headmaster Chen, you're being too biased. Do you think the World Olympiad is a game? Chapter 111. Jealousy grew like wild grass. Even though Yi Ying's head was lowered and no one could see the expression on her face, the gloominess she exuded was like a swamp full of animal carcasses, dark and cold. It made one's hair stand on end. Tan Wei, who was sitting to her right, subconsciously turned to look at her. Before he could speak, he was frightened by the expression on her face and his eyelids twitched. Tan Wei's heart sank. Unlike Xie Sifeng and He Jimin, who always followed Yi Ying's lead, Tan Wei quietly looked away. This Yi Ying was so unfamiliar that she felt terrified. Principal Chen. Teacher Ku suppressed the panic in her heart. She didn't care that they were in front of the students and asked, "Is this decision yours, or?" "The decision is in the province's number 1 middle school. It's up to the students' grades, not up to me." Principal Chern glanced at Teacher Ku indifferently, blocking all her questions. "Of course, don't be happy too early. Whether or not you can go abroad for the competition, you still have to go through 2 rounds of screening before you can truly enter the closed-door intensive training." The noisy classroom fell into a brief silence. It turned out that they still had to go through 2 rounds of screening before they had a chance. It was so difficult. They didn't know if Yi Qian would succeed. But whether or not he succeeded, Yi Qian skipped the first round of screening, which meant that he was strong enough. Thinking of this, they secretly looked at Yi Qian with a hint of awe. "Before I leave, I have one more thing to say to the students of Class 2. Headmaster Chen's eyes, which were as vast as the sea, looked at the young faces and said meaningfully, "I still stand by my words. Results don't mean anything. Character is what separates nobility and lowliness. Character is the difference between nobility and lowliness." Yi Ying, who hadn't raised her head, felt her vision darken and she almost fainted. Was he referring to her? Was he referring to her? Yi Qian, Ying gritted her teeth and cursed viciously in her heart. It seemed that this was the only way to get rid of the hatred in her heart, but she didn't know that the more she did this, the more detestable she looked. To Yi Qian, this was just an insignificant thing in her life. It wasn't worth being happy about. Of course, using grades to shut the mouths of the students for a long time saved a lot of trouble. After the language class, Teacher Ku, who had lost her dignity as a teacher, almost ran away. She couldn't do anything to Yi Qian now. She couldn't scold or hit. She didn't even Yi Qian's. Looking at her fleeing figure, Yi Jian, whose eyes were slightly cold, sneered coldly. She would never forget how Teacher Ku's in collusion with Sun Dongqing's in the past. She would never forget how she had slapped her hard in front of the entire class and scolded her, "You're a disgrace and a loser. You don't deserve to be her student." In this life, she would make sure that Yi Qian never stood in front of the lecture table again, because she didn't deserve to be a teacher. For the whole morning, Yi Qian was bathed in the subtle gazes of her classmates. Those rumors disappeared instantly, as if they never happened. On the way to the cafeteria at noon, Unyielding was proud of herself. She lowered her voice and gloated. When Principal Chun appeared, Teacher Ku was so scared that her legs turned to jelly. "Oh my, you don't know how I felt at that time. It was like drinking honey water. My whole body felt comfortable." Chapter 112. Yi Qian glanced at her with a smile and said calmly, "You still have more than a year to live under her. Student, and restrain yourself. After all, she's still our old." A student suddenly walked over and interrupted Yi Qian. "Student Yi, I'm sorry." The boy suddenly apologized. After that, he bowed deeply. "I hope you can get better results in the upcoming exams so that you can represent our country in the competition." This unforeseen event made Yi Qian's lips curl up slightly. Starting over, everything was so beautiful. He smiled and said, "Thank you, I will work hard." After experiencing the storm, the rainbow had appeared. From the school building to the cafeteria, Yi Qian had already received countless apologies from his classmate. At the same time, he had also received kindness from his classmate. The corners of Unyielding's eyes were slightly moist. "Yi Qian, from now on, no one will say anything. No one will dare to doubt you." "I'm not afraid of being doubted, nor am I afraid of being talked about." Yi Qian's eyes were cold as he looked at the horizon. The sun pierced through the clouds like a sharp sword, splitting the darkness and welcoming the endless light. "I'm only afraid that if I stay where I am, I will eventually disappear from the world like a speck of dust. My efforts are not to prove anything to them, but to live a better life for myself. To live, do you understand?" Her last sentence was like an old woman who had experienced the vicissitudes of life. She summed up all her persistence in one word: live. Yi Qian's words were like the evening drum and the morning bell in Unyielding's heart. This kind girl instantly understood many things. One is marked by the company one keeps. Yi Qian's charm could always imperceptibly affect the lives of those close to her. Seeing Yi Qian being talked to by his classmates from time to time, the leaves in Yi Ying's hand were stained green by the green juice between her fingers. Anger had already taken root in her eyes and could not be moved away. Liao Jian's figure flitted past the lush trees. Yi Ying looked away and walked towards the famous reading pavilion in the school. The reading pavilion was located in the middle of two school buildings. It was surrounded by tall trees with green leaves. In the morning, many students would read here. At noon, there was no one in the reading pavilion. Yi Ying walked along the bluestone path and saw Liao Jian with a cigarette in his mouth. He looked like a gangster. "All right, my dad told me to tell you that your dad will be back in 2 months. Yi Ying didn't like talking to this kind of poor student, but she couldn't be too far away, so she could only suffer. "Also, have you found out what I want you to do?" When Liao Jian heard that his father would be back in 2 months, the haze on his face immediately disappeared. He looked around and quickly took out something that looked like a passbook from his pants pocket. This is a small gift from my mother to your family. Keep it well. As for Yi Qian, just you wait. We know where she lives. We can teach her a lesson anytime. He just didn't expect that this chick was actually living in the recruit assembly camp. He had to coax Ying first. When his dad came back, it would be a piece of cake to teach Yi Qian a lesson. Someone walked out of the reading pavilion. Ying was afraid that someone would see her with a poor student. She immediately said, "All right, hurry up and leave. As for Yi Qian, I'll tell you what to do when the time comes." Recently, it would be impossible to teach her a lesson. Countless pairs of eyes were watching. If anything happened, the whole school would know. Chapter 113. Liao Jian couldn't wait to leave. When he heard this, he scurried away like a mouse and disappeared from Yi Ying's sight. Yi Qian from Class 2 is really amazing. She even has the chance to represent the country in a competition. How enviable. That's because she's really capable. Let's see if you still dare to speak ill of her behind her back. Gao Yang's cold voice came from the other side of the tree. She's just a girl. You guys said so much about her before. If you're a man, you should go and apologize. I should go and apologize. Why don't you come with me? Hearing this, Yi Ying, who was about to leave, stopped. She wanted to hear Gao Yang's reply. After a moment of silence, Gao Yang laughed self-deprecatingly and said, "Ha, you want me to go with you? I'm afraid she'll run away even faster." She didn't hide her disgust for him. Yi Ying's pupils constricted. After the footsteps left, she laughed softly and left the reading pavilion expressionlessly. Once Yi Qian found out about Gao Yang's family background, would she still run away? She would definitely be like a housefly and keep a close eye on him. In the entire school, wherever students gathered, Yi Qian's name would always be heard. This storm continued until June. After June, the weather was so hot that people just wanted to soak in cold water to cool off. For Yi Qian, no matter how hot the weather was, it couldn't stop her from studying. In the teacher's meeting room, Yi Qian, who had already started a study room, began to systematically study the first year's curriculum. When the third-year teachers found out that Yi Qian had a 50% chance of representing the country in a competition, they spontaneously organized to sacrifice their lunch break and take turns tutoring for Yi Qian. As a teacher, it was their duty to teach their students. They were very willing to give Yi Qian private lessons. No teacher would dislike a student who could self-study all the third-year subjects in a month and achieve high grades. If this kind of talent was buried, it would be the fault of the teachers. 2 weeks before the second year's exams, the school finally received the results of the selection of students who could participate in the provincial exams. Other than Yi Qian, who had already been confirmed as a student, Gao Yang, Yi Ying, and Zhou Liao, a total of 18 students, would be sent to the provincial capital the day after the midterm exams. When Sun Dongqing heard about this from Yi Zhifan, she wanted nothing more than to hang a string of firecrackers at the door. Going overseas? Her daughter could go overseas to participate in the competition. This was such a great honor. Don't make so much noise outside. Ying still needs to pass 2 more tests. After Yi Zhifan finished speaking, he began to regret his words. With a stern face, he said, "Ying went and so did Jian Yiling." When Sun Dongqing heard that, she snorted and said, "So what if that wretched girl went? She can't be more powerful than Ying. Don't mention her in front of me. Every time you mention her, I get angry. You only got first place in the entire cohort once, and you're already so cocky. Pooh. Ying has been in a bad mood for a whole month. I'm too lazy to talk to you. There's a meeting in town tonight. You and Ying can eat by yourselves." Yi Zhifan, who had just returned, picked up his briefcase and walked out of the house. He didn't want to stay with his wife for even a minute longer. Sun Dongqing stared at her husband's back. After a while, a cold smile appeared in her eyes. She turned around and went back to the kitchen to make dinner for Yi Ying. Today was Friday. After school, all the boarding students would go home. When Yi Qian walked out of the school gate, he didn't walk in the direction of town. Instead, he walked in the opposite direction. Along the way, there were students returning home after school. They were all wearing the same school uniform. From afar, it was impossible to tell who was who. Yi Qian walked about 200 meters before he stopped. Someone was following him. Chapter 114. F***ck. Why is she going up the mountain? A youth wearing a tank top, flowery shorts, and flip-flops was chewing gum. He stared at the girl who didn't want to walk on the main road and insisted on going up the mountain. Going up the mountain to go home? The blond youth with the word, Dao, tattooed on his arm looked at his companion. Do you still want to follow? Yes. The youth in the tank top looked down at the flip-flops on his feet. F***ck, let's go in and take a look. If there's anything good, come back and tell Brother Liao. You go after her first. King wore the wrong shoes. The Brother Liao they were talking about was Liao Jian's father, Liao Yud. Once they entered the mountain, they would be in Yi Qian's territory. Yi Jian, who was standing behind the tree, looked coldly at a yellow-haired young man who walked past her. She looked back and saw another young man who was chasing after her while cursing. After the blond youth walked out of sight, Yi Qian walked out from behind the tree and stood directly in front of the youth in the tank top. She smiled and said, "Why are you following me?" She walked out directly, scaring the youth who was walking with his head down. After being stunned for a moment, he recognized the student who was blocking his way. F***ck, she's gone. The blond youth rushed to the front but didn't see anyone, so he immediately turned back. After 3 to 5 minutes of separation, he saw his friend with a piece of yellowish-yellow rag stuffed in his mouth. His upper body was naked, and his hands were tied behind his back to a pine tree. He was struggling with a muffled sound. F***ck, what's going on? When the guy in the tank top saw his friend come back, he wasn't happy. Instead, he struggled even harder. His eyeballs seemed to be convulsing as they kept rolling upward. The woo-woo sounds coming from his throat could be translated as, up, up. Unfortunately, the blond youth didn't know. He ran over and cursed, F***ck, who the F***ck did this? Who did this? I did it, what do you want? Suddenly hearing a girl's voice, the blond young man subconsciously took a step back and looked up. He saw a girl in a school uniform on the tree looking at him with a smile. Isn't this the girl who was following me? You followed me for a few kilometers. Tell me, who told you to come here? On the tree, Yi Qian's gaze was cold as he looked down from above. His beautiful face was as cold as the moonlight. You don't want to be like your friend. Speak clearly before I get angry. What young people hated the most was being looked down upon by others, not to mention that he was just a hooligan from a small town who was used to being unreasonable. Hearing this, the yellow-haired young man was furious. He lifted his foot and kicked the tree. F***ck, get down here. Cursing and kicking was quite impressive, but he didn't see that his friend was almost scared to the point of wetting his pants. I'm afraid that if I come down, you'll have to run. Yi Qian, who was speaking, held onto a tree branch with both hands and landed on the ground in a standard high jump. He smiled at the yellow-haired young man who was trying to show off. Looks like you guys are going to be in the same boat tonight. Even without months of training, Yi Qian was still capable of taking care of 2 hooligans. He didn't even need to expend any effort to take them down. Young lady, I'll talk, okay? The yellow-haired young man, who was knocked to the ground by Yi Qian, begged for mercy. It's Brother Liao. He asked us to keep an eye on you for a few days. Chapter 115. Yi Qian grabbed his wrists and said with a smile, It's too late to say anything now. Be a good boy and go with your brother. Brother Liao? Liao Yud? Why would he let someone follow him? Did he know something? Yi Qian's heart skipped a beat, but he didn't show it on his face. He waited for the other party to stand up in pain, then he tied him up against a tree. I'm a student. I'm afraid of people like you. Tie him up tight so you don't follow me. The two youths were about to cry. Damn it, they were the ones who were afraid of her. On the road, Liao Jian led Yi Ying and said, I don't know when your sister got involved with the army. She usually stays at the camp where the new recruits gather. She even takes their car back to the village on Fridays. Liao Jian, who was in the group of students, said with a fierce look, How do you want to deal with her? I'm afraid it'll be a little difficult. She was indeed capable. She even got involved with the army. Ying pursed her lips and smiled coldly. I really underestimated her in the past. She walked a few steps and looked at the road that wound into the mountains. She frowned. Why don't I see you? She's probably up ahead. Keep walking. Liao Jian didn't finish his sentence and disappeared into the group of students. Yi Qian, up the mountain. Ying also saw the figure walking from the side of the mountain to the road. Her gaze was like a poisonous gelatin, glued to Yi Qian's back. After a while, her lips curled into a cold smile that made Liao Jian's heart skip a beat. She said slowly, I underestimated her. I have to let her know that she can't step on my shoulders just because she's in the limelight. His gaze, which seemed to be laced with poison, was too real. After dealing with the two young gangsters, Yi Jian stopped and looked back slightly. His black eyes were as cold as metal. Since Liao Yid sent people to follow her, how could Yi Ying and Liao Jian be involved? Could it be that she was wrong? It wasn't that Liao Yid was still following him because of what happened that night, but was it related to Yi Ying? That's right. Xia Jinyuan had said that it wouldn't be a problem to lock up someone like Liao Yid for 3 to 5 years. Now he was back early. Thinking about the secret interactions between Yi Ying and Liao Jian, Yi Qian's eyes flashed with a cold light. Could it be that Yi Zhifan played a role in this? Was that why Liao Yid came home? The army's jeep is parked at the big corner, Yi Jian thought to herself as she jogged towards the jeep from a brisk pace. She had to ask Xia Jinyuan first to see if he had any lead. However, in the past 2 months, she had been to the army quite a few times. Usually, she would fight with the soldiers on Saturdays and Sundays, but she had never once met that elegant and dangerous man. He didn't know if he would be able to meet them this time. Perhaps he could ask the soldiers. On Sunday, the sun was even hotter than Saturday. There was no wind, and even the cicadas were scorched by the sun and stopped chirping. Yi Qian, who was carrying a sniper rifle on her back, hugged a pine tree with both hands. She took a deep breath and climbed up the tree like a cheetah. She was undergoing close-range combat training within 30 meters, and her opponent was none other than a real sniper in the army. She had been waiting since noon. As the sun gradually tilted, she waited until the sun set in the west. Finally, the owls in the deep forest made the sound of foraging. After 10 hours of waiting in ambush, Yi Jian remained motionless. Her expression was still indifferent. Some ants fell from the leaves and landed on her sweaty neck, causing her skin to itch. Chapter 116. Yi Qian did not move and allowed the ants to crawl up his neck and into his hair. The target would appear in this area. Now it was a standoff between snipers. It was a contest of patience, perseverance, and who could shoot faster. The starry sky was beautiful tonight. The bright stars hung in the sky, and the boundless beauty made the soldiers resting in the small open space reluctant to look away. Captain Xia, how much longer do you plan to sleep? A soldier with an assault rifle on his back asked Xia Jinyuan, who was sleeping on a rope. It's been 10 hours. Don't let the little girl wait for too long. Little girl? Under the starry sky, Xia Jinyuan lazily blinked his eyes and said with a faint smile, Little girl? Do you think the person who killed 5 soldiers in one day is a little girl? 5 soldiers. I think it's too little to let them clean the toilets for a month. Sigh, this was a headache. Old Man Jen and Uncle Chern had taught this little girl. Now, as long as she returned to the army, she would be trained by the soldiers in the unit. From the regiment commander to the political commissar to the battalion commander and squad leader, everyone was a little scared. That little girl. She was as cunning as a fox. She was so smart that they had to plan carefully if they wanted to catch her. Xia Jinyuan, who had been away on business for 2 months, came back last night and learned about this. He originally had 2 days of rest, so he came out with the soldiers today. He hadn't seen that bold girl for 2 months. He wanted to see how much she had improved. Xia Jinyuan, whose face was heavily painted, held a sniper rifle in his arms. His eyes were cold and sharp like an eagle's. He flipped down from the rope and made a gesture. A total of 5 soldiers gathered in a circle. 11 hours later, the bushes began to shake. Yi Qian opened the night vision scope and put his eyes on it. A figure swept through the bushes and disappeared in an instant. Yi Qian, whose finger was already on the trigger, paused for a moment and gently moved his eyes away from the scope. He was teasing her. No movement? Is there a mistake with the target? Let's wait and see what's going on with Captain Xia. 2 figures flitted through the bushes and hid close to the tree. They whispered to each other in the darkness, "Cross interference, try again." In order to lure out the sniper, the crosshair interference would be carried out at the same time. Using a tree branch to prop up the helmet, he then used a thin fishing line to wrap around the tree branch. As he released the line, he quietly began to interfere with the grass and trees. The shrubs shook again, but Yi Qian put away his sniper rifle and continued to stand in his original position on the tree, motionless like a statue. She only had one goal, which was to find the sniper in the troop. The rest of the soldiers were not her target. Through the night vision goggles, the whole world was green. Not only were there moths and mosquitoes in the forest in June, but there were also poisonous snakes, rats, and ants. A colorful venomous snake that was only as thick as a little finger slithered through the leaves and quietly hid in the bushes. Xia Jinyuan carefully stepped over it. With a sniper rifle in his hand, he carried a cold and bloodthirsty aura. He appeared in the forest like a beast foraging for food at night. "Captain Xia, the target was not found." Team A's voice came from the earpiece. Team B and Team C's voices came one after another. Neither of them had found the target. Xia Jinyuan, who had already passed Yi Qian's position, ordered lazily before hanging up. "Go back and wash the training uniforms of the 2 squads for 2 weeks. Chapter 117. The 6 soldiers almost burst into tears. Last night, when they came back, they punished their comrades from Class 5 to clean the toilet. Today, when they came back, they punished Class 2 to wash their training uniforms. They might as well have run 10 laps around the field. It was 9 o'clock in the evening. It had been 13 hours since the ambush began. Finally, about 400 meters away, the leaves rustled softly. It was very soft, like the sound of a wild rabbit running through the forest. But Yi Qian knew that it wasn't the sound of a rabbit. It was her target, the other sniper, who was moving. During the day, Yi Qian could accurately hit a target within 370 meters if he had a wide field of vision. But sniping in the forest at night was much more difficult. Half an hour later, the leaves rustled softly again. Yi Qian moved his eyes closer to the scope. In that green world, it was still quiet, without a trace of movement. Xia Jinyuan, who was hiding behind a tree, gently pulled back his camouflage helmet. A gunshot came from his 4 o'clock and hit his camouflage helmet. In a split second, Xia Jinyuan moved his sniper rifle and shot at a tree about 6 meters away from his 4 o'clock. There was a faint smell of chemicals in the air. Yi Qian's shot had failed, and at the same time his counterattack had failed. The guns in their hands weren't real sniper rifles loaded with bullets. They were sniper training rifles designed to be identical to a real sniper rifle. Similarly, the bullets weren't real bullets either. There was a sound like a snake slithering through the leaves. In a flash, Xia Jinyuan jumped and dodged Yi Qian's first sneak attack. Since the 30-meter sniper had failed, it was time for a close-range attack. Yi Qian held an unopened military dagger in his hand. When the opponent jumped and dodged, Yi Qian didn't hesitate. He closed in on him, raised his dagger, and attacked again. Her attacks were all deadly moves that could kill her opponent once they were successful. Fast and fierce, with a murderous aura, it made Xia Jinyuan's heart skip a beat. This girl. The energy in his body was as if he had killed countless enemies. There was a faint, bloodthirsty aura around him. Yi Qian, who was less than 1.6 meters tall, was up against Xia Jinyuan, who was 1.86 meters tall. She played to her strengths and avoided her weaknesses. She was as nimble as a sly fox, and when Xia Jinyuan attacked her with his bare hands, she was forced into a situation where she couldn't retreat. As she counterattacked, her slender and nimble body. In the blink of an eye, she slipped between Xia Jinyuan's legs, turned around, and appeared behind him. What an agile girl! Even this was avoided by her. However, Xia Jinyuan smirked and turned around. His tall and straight body transformed into a beast pouncing on its prey as he reached for Yi Qian's throat with one hand. This was an extremely satisfying fight. Yi Qian's fighting spirit was completely aroused. She stepped on a tree trunk with one foot and let out a soft cry. Her body instantly soared into the air, and she grabbed onto the thick branches hanging from the tree trunk. Her slender body seemed to have transformed into a bird in the forest, but her legs were sharp and fierce as she kicked straight at Xia Jinyuan's chest. Bang! Bang! Xia Jinyuan, who had kicked his chest twice, raised his eyebrows and dodged for the third time. His lightning-fast hands were like iron pliers as he grabbed onto Yi Qian's slender ankles. Then, with a forceful pull, Yi Qian was pulled down along with the vines. Then, with a twist, Yi Qian was pinned under a thick layer of withered leaves. He purposely chose the ground so that Yi Qian, whose chest was on the ground, would fall on the thick layer of withered leaves to reduce the pain caused by the impact. Chapter 118. Little girl, you're the first person to kick me twice in the chest in recent years. Xia Jinyuan chuckled softly. His clear voice broke the atmosphere of the fight. You're very strong too. I'm afraid there will be 2 bruised footprints tomorrow. During the fight, Yi Qian felt like Xia Jinyuan. However, he thought that it was unlikely that Xia Jinyuan would practice with him, so even if he had doubts, he didn't say anything. When he heard Xia Jinyuan's voice, he let out a long sigh. Captain Xia, are you trying to bully me? It's a waste for an all-round soldier to fight me. She was still struggling, trying to escape from under his body. Xia Jinyuan looked at her youthful face through the night vision goggles. The smile in his eyes deepened. For now, no one can escape from me. Save your energy. You're a bold girl who defeated 5 of our soldiers in one go. Hey, could it be that he had specially come here to seek revenge? Shouldn't you be more grateful to me? The feeling of being pinned down in the dead leaves was not an ordinary kind of uncomfortable, especially when his iron arms were holding her hands. He was so strong that if she moved a little, he would tighten his grip. Look at this little fox. She really knows how to talk. She hit the nail on the head. They were indeed thanking her. That was why the 5 soldiers had to clean the toilets every day to reflect on themselves. Xia Jinyuan raised his eyebrows and smiled. Indeed, we have to thank you. That's why I came here personally. Do you admit defeat? Even though he felt that he had an unfair advantage, he found it interesting when he saw the bright and beautiful expression on the little girl's face. Admit defeat? Why not admit defeat? Yi Qian didn't struggle and sighed. I admit defeat. Of course I admit defeat. It doesn't matter if you're an all-round soldier or not. I didn't win against you. This is the difference between our abilities. Every time she met him, she would see the difference between them. The little girl had always been able to accept her shortcomings and didn't avoid them. He admired this very much. The difference between our abilities is a few years of training. It's the difference between an underage girl and an adult man. But little girl, you can kick me twice in less than half a year. That's enough to make the soldiers in the army blush with shame. There are a lot of ants in the dead leaves. Get up first. Xia Jinyuan loosened his grip and pulled her up from the dead leaves. Yi Qian, who was about to get up, suddenly chuckled and launched another sneak attack. He jumped up and wrapped his elbows around Xia Jinyuan's neck from behind. He stepped on Xia Jinyuan's knee with one foot and pushed Xia Jinyuan, who was 186 meters tall, to the ground in an extremely valiant manner. This time, their positions were reversed. It was Yi Jian who straddled Xia Jinyuan's muscular waist. The dagger in her hand was directly placed beside his throat. Captain Xia, all's fair in war. Are we even? Xia Jinyuan's voice was cold. What do you think? With the dagger at his throat, Xia Jinyuan smiled warmly. His gaze slowly slid down Yi Qian's face and stopped between the two of them. Look down, little girl. Yi Qian lowered his gaze. Oh my God! A black pistol was pointed right at his chest. Putting away the dagger, Yi Qian shrugged and said in a carefree manner, I still lost. But... He blinked his dark eyes and smiled. It feels good to have an all-round soldier under me. Chapter 119. After saying that, Yi Qian even raised her hand and patted him lightly on the chest. She repeated, It feels really good. In front of him was a 14-year-old girl who didn't know anything. What she said, at least, wouldn't make adults think otherwise. As a man, Xia Jinyuan couldn't help but laugh bitterly after hearing her words. Although he knew that she didn't mean anything by her words when they fell into the ears of a man like him. He couldn't help but feel a little like an adult, and because he knew that she didn't mean it, it gave rise to a different meaning. What should he do? This girl who doesn't know anything but can always provoke a man's thoughts. Xia Jinyuan's eyes darkened slightly. He looked at the beautiful face in front of him, which was enough to make a young man's heart flutter, and his thin lips slightly pursed. At 14 years old, she should know a little. Otherwise, she would definitely be at a disadvantage in the future. When she stood up from his body, he wrapped one of his hands around her slender waist. With the purest strength of a man, he pinned the beautiful girl tightly onto his body. Not only did the unforeseen event happen suddenly, but it also happened inexplicably. The world spun, and Yi Qian was once again pinned to the ground. This time, she was pinned on her back. Suddenly, she felt as if she was carrying the weight of a man who was more than 186 meters tall, and she almost died. As she took deep breaths, the refreshing minty scent on his body enveloped her. The man's scorching body temperature even seeped through their clothes and rushed toward her body. This was no longer a simple fight. This sudden change made Yi Qian, who had never been so close to a man, instantly feel uneasy. Not only could she smell the masculine scent on his body, but as a woman's intuition, she also felt that the development of the situation was a little unusual. Xia Jinyuan, get up! Just as her fist landed on his shoulder, he grabbed her hands and pinned them above her head. Yi Qian, who had never been so close to a man of the opposite sex, was a little flustered. She simply couldn't understand why Xia Jinyuan was acting so strangely. Get up, she said through gritted teeth. Her dark eyes shone with a cold light as she stared at the man whose handsome face was covered by oil paint. I'm very, very angry right now. Xia Jinyuan. Not only did he not get up, but his elegant and handsome face slowly inched closer. The man's slightly heavy breath was all over her face. Yi Qian's body tensed up, and she felt a sense of danger. Girl, when you straddle a man and say it feels good while taking advantage of his chest, do you know what your actions represent? He said in a deep voice. His voice was low and pleasing to the ear, full of sexiness and magnetism. Do you know what it means? The last syllable was as intoxicating as red wine. This is an invitation, you know. You're inviting this man, no? After living for 2 lifetimes, this was the first time Yi Jian heard a man say such explicit words to her. Even someone as calm as her couldn't help but panic at this moment. No. I don't mean anything else. Xia Jinyuan, you're too close to me. Your lips are almost touching my nose. Get up, get up. But how can I tell that you're inviting me? It seems, a little too close. Xia Jinyuan, who realized this, raised his head slightly and looked at the girl who was so frightened by him that her face had changed. He thought to himself, as expected, I still need to scare her. She'll understand after a little scare. Chapter 120. But her eyes were really bright as the stars tonight. Yi Qian saw that he still misunderstood and became furious. You're an old man, what's there to invite? Not only was he 6 years older than her, he was also very dangerous. Even if she ate a bear's heart and leopard's guts, she would never touch him. Old man. She said he was an old man. Xia Jinyuan suddenly felt what it felt like to bring disaster upon oneself. He took a deep breath of the air filled with dried leaves and said with a faint smile, The 20-year-old me is an old man? Fine, even if I'm an old man, don't you think that I'm much more attractive than those little boys in your school? Undeniably, that was true. But even if that was the case, what did it have to do with her? Can't we stand up and talk about this properly? She wanted him to get lost, but he refused. Yi Qian suppressed his anger and tried to negotiate. I'm really out of breath from being squashed by you. She was unintentionally teasing him again, but she had been suppressing him for a long time. Xia Jinyuan's face darkened, and he did not let go immediately. Instead, he gritted his teeth and said, You ungrateful girl, you're lucky to have met me. If it were another man, he would have knocked on your door in the middle of the night. She pulled away a little, but did not get up immediately. He knew a little about the little girl's temperament. If she really got up, her fists would come at him like raindrops. Jun Yen restrained his mischievous smile, and his clear voice was incomparably serious as he said, Remember, girl. Number 1. You are not allowed to sit on a man's body, especially on his waist. Number 2. You are not allowed to touch a man's body. Number 3. You are not allowed to use words like feel, press, straddle, or ride on a man. Number 4. I'm letting go now, so you are not allowed to do anything else. When Yi Qian heard this, he finally understood. What was going on? But did he have to use such a method to tell her that men were not to be trifled with? She was scared silly by him. Fine, I promise I won't do anything else. She was clearly gritting her teeth, but her voice sounded clear and calm. However, when Xia Jinyuan looked at the deep bite marks on his wrist, he understood that no matter how old a woman was, their promises were useless. Hiss, little girl, just how ruthless is she? How big was his mouth? It was just enough to leave a circle of teeth marks. Judging from her teeth, the little girl also had 2 canine teeth. Her teeth were also very neat. When he talked to her during the day, he could see that her teeth were neat and white as pearls. Yi Qian also realized how hard he had bitten Hua Xiaoheng. He pursed his lips and looked at the satchel on Hua Xiaoheng's waist. He reached into the satchel and took out the first aid kit that all soldiers were given. Give me your hand. She lowered her head and muttered, Even though he's so skilled, he doesn't know how to dodge. He could only disinfect it first and get the vaccine when he returned to the army. Xia Jinyuan, who was about to deal with it himself, saw her open the satchel on his waist. He knew that the little girl was also frightened. As he reached his hand over, he sighed and said, You heartless little girl. You bit me as if I was your enemy. If he had really dodged, The hot-tempered little girl would probably be so angry that she would ignore him. If a bite could calm her down, then it wouldn't matter. Yi Qian opened the first aid kit and took out medical alcohol and iodine. She grabbed his strong wrist and said angrily, "How dare you say I'm heartless? If it were any other girl, they would have screamed for help by now." Chapter 121. She lowered her head and carefully and gently disinfected the wound. Xia Jinyuan looked at the girl's delicate and translucent skin under the light. The smile on his thin lips subconsciously became gentler. "Are you exaggerating? You seemed very scared just now." Yi Qian looked up and glanced at him. If it were a timid girl, she would have fainted long ago. "Yeah, so it's good that it's you, right?" She was indeed still angry. Sigh, the little girl already had a problem with him, and now she was angry. How long would he have to coax her again? His deep eyes held a faint smile as he said, "Fortunately, you didn't scream. Otherwise, I would be in trouble." After disinfecting the wound with alcohol and applying a layer of iodine, Yi Qian put away the medical supplies with a cold expression. "I'm angry now. Don't talk to me." When Xia Jinyuan heard this, he was instantly amused. Of course, he had to coax her properly. The little girl was here, so of course he had to coax her. However, he still had to make things clear. He reached out and rubbed her head. "That's why I said you have no conscience. Did you forget what I said before? 14 years old isn't that young, classmate Yi." His warning echoed in Yi Qian's mind. He suddenly felt his face turn red. "You're not allowed to sit on a man's waist. You're fighting, how can you be so careful? You're not allowed to take the initiative to touch a man's body. Didn't she just pat him in a moment of happiness? You're not allowed to talk about your feelings to a man." T. It was all his own imagination. The more he thought about it, the angrier Yi Qian got. He glared at him fiercely and said angrily, "It's not what you're thinking at all." "What feelings?" "I'm referring to the feeling of winning." "What nonsense are you thinking?" Come. Drink some water first. Don't be angry, don't be angry." Xia Jinyuan looked at the little face in front of him. It was as if his heart had been soaked in spring water on a hot day. It felt very comfortable. He took out the military bottle and handed it to her. "It's clean. You didn't drink a single mouthful." When the little girl lost her temper, her eyes, which were originally as bright as stars, were now so lively that he wanted to touch them. If he really touched it, he was afraid that he would have another bite on his left hand tonight. Yi Jian took a look at the water bottle that he handed over and rubbed her temples as if she had a headache. Sometimes he was cold, sometimes he was deep, sometimes he was elegant, and sometimes he felt very close to you. Such an unpredictable man made her feel danger and wanted to stay away from him. However, his charm was that you wanted to get close to him and learn from him. Yi Qian didn't take the water bottle he handed over and glared at him unwillingly. He didn't want to continue this topic that wasn't suitable for him to discuss with her. After calming himself down, he said calmly, "I'm not angry. I know what you said. Don't mention it again. I'll be careful." Xia Jinyuan had taught her this lesson today, and it left a deep impression on her that she still wanted to hit him. She gradually walked out of her embarrassment and anger, but in Xia Jinyuan's eyes, it seemed like she was still shy. After looking at the little girl who was in a dilemma for a while, his thin lips curved into a sexy smile. At this moment, her usually cold eyes seemed to have a color that they didn't usually have. Although they were beautiful, they weren't seductive. They were like a blooming lotus, but also like peach blossoms. She no longer had that faintly discernible aloofness. Her cold eyes were bright, making her even more attractive. As if he had been staring for too long, Xia Jinyuan calmly looked away and casually changed the topic. "What are your plans for the summer vacation? Will you be in the military?" Chapter 122. It was not a bad idea to spend time in the army. After returning from work, he could tease the bold little girl. With the change of topic, Yi Qian quickly got over the awkwardness. She calmed down for a moment before replying, "No, I took an exam. After that, I'll be going to Australia. I'll be back by August 6th or 7th. Taking an exam and then possibly going to Australia? The World Mathematical Olympiad?" She did not say it out loud, but he could guess it accurately. At the same time, a smile slowly appeared in his unfathomable eyes. The World Mathematical Olympiad. Coincidentally, he had also taken part in it. Yi Qian saw that he had guessed it so quickly and looked at him with some confusion. Soldiers even care about this? Did he need to tell her that the path she was taking now was the path he had taken in the past? She was 14 years old and he was 14 years old. Such a coincidence. It really surprised him. However, why did he feel that she did not have much interest in this kind of meaningful competition? Take the exam well. It will be of great help to your knowledge. You'll meet a group of real geniuses. Their conversation style and talents are all worth learning from. The little girl had always had her own ideas. If she really did not have much interest, he was afraid that she would not put in much effort in the exam. There was a faint sound of static in the earpiece. Xia Jinyuan raised his hand to press down on the earpiece. The lazy and relaxed expression on his face disappeared in an instant. His elegant eyebrows revealed a stern expression as he said in a deep voice, "Q King received. Please reply." There is the latest news from the international side of the stone-crushing operation. The commander's voice came from the earpiece. After he said a few words, Xia Jinyuan suddenly glanced at Yi Qian. A faint smile flashed across his cold eyes. The communication was cut off. Xia Jinyuan stood up first and looked meaningfully at Yi Qian. "Let's go. I'll send you down the mountain. Dad and Uncle Chen are waiting for you downstairs." It was already midnight. Yi Qian saw that it was so late and hurriedly stood up. "Why is it so late? Let's go, let's go. I still have to go to school tomorrow." She didn't feel that it was very late at all. Why was it already midnight? After contacting the other 5 soldiers, a group of people came down from the mountain. Xia Jinyuan sent Yi Qian to the outermost sentry post of the army. Seeing that she didn't look tired, he smiled and said, "Let me remind you again. Remember everything I said before. And me. I told you not to mention it again." Yi Qian, who didn't want to talk about it at all, glared at the man who had wiped off the paint on his face, revealing his handsome face. Without waiting for him to finish speaking, she jumped into the car and slammed the door. The motorcade sent her back to the village to meet up with Uncle Jen and Principal Chen. Xia Jinyuan, who had a faint smile on his handsome face, watched the car leave. He stood there for a while and said softly, "What should I do? It seems that I like to see her angry face when she is annoyed by me." The regiment commander's voice came through the earpiece again. Xia Jinyuan turned around and jumped into the car with elegant steps that couldn't be ignored. He rushed to the regiment commander's office. By the time he returned to the dormitory, the sky was already bright. He took off his combat uniform and walked into the shower, revealing his muscular upper body. The cool water washed over his perfectly sculpted and extremely sexy body. When he raised his hand, his gaze fell on the bite marks on his wrist. Only then did he remember that he hadn't gone for the vaccine yet. Within 24 hours, he had to go to the infirmary at 9. When he lay on the bed, he thought of her fleeing figure again. In the brightly lit dormitory, the elegant yet dangerous man curved his lips slightly and closed his eyes to sleep. Yi Qian, who had been taught a special lesson by a pure man, spent the next few days waving her fists in the middle of the night. Even in her dreams, she was beating up Xia Jinyuan. Chapter 123. However, this education class that had left a deep impression on her had indeed taught her that when interacting with boys, be it in terms of words or actions, she had to maintain a certain distance from them. 2 weeks later, Fujian Town welcomed the end of the semester exam. Yi Qian and the other 18 students who needed to go to the provincial first school to take the exam had 2 days off after the exam. They left at 7 a.m. on June 29 and took a total of 18 hours to arrive at the provincial capital. This time, including the students from Fujian Town Middle School, there were more than 200 students participating in the provincial selection. Out of these 200 students, only 12 would be able to enter the national selection exam in the capital. After the national selection exam, only 12 people could represent the country in the World Olympic Games. These were the true elites of the elites. The provincial first school was the largest, best, and strictest school in the province. It was divided into junior high school and senior high school. Yi Qian, who had rested well last night, walked into the school that she had no chance to go to in her previous life. The hot sun did not affect her mood. Headmaster Chen, who had accompanied Headmaster Chow, stood on the 5th floor of the male dormitory. When he saw Yi Jian strolling in the garden, he smiled and said to Headmaster Chow, "This girl's mental fortitude is stronger than the average student. Others are still studying on this day, but she's walking around. The exam is also a psychological battle. It's good that she's like this." Principal Chow smiled. His expression and words showed that he had high hopes for Yi Qian. Only 12 students will be selected. The capital has always taken up more than half of the students. Even if only one representative from the province goes abroad, it will be an affirmation of the province's education. Therefore, once Yi Qian was selected, she would represent the country and the province. Principal Chen understood the hidden meaning in Principal Chow's words. However, he did not care about fame and fortune. He said calmly, "We just hope that it won't affect her life. She doesn't need interviews or news. This is what I hope for." This is also the request she made when she agreed to participate. "Old Chow, please bear with it. She doesn't need fame and fortune. Sai, she's indeed a student taught by you." Principal Chow patted his colleague's shoulder and said with admiration, "Let's see if she can make it and become one of the 12 students." In this regard, Principal Chen had full confidence in Yi Qian, but, after a slight pause, he sighed and said, "Yi Qian really doesn't have much interest in this kind of competition. As for how to convince her to take the exam seriously and strive to become one of the top 12 students in the country, I'm afraid we'll have to do some brainstorming." After Principal Chow heard this, he laughed heartily. "I think there's someone who can convince Yi Qian. In fact, she will definitely do her best. Come, I'll take you to a place. You know this person." When Headmaster Chen saw who it was, his eyes turned serious. He looked at the young major and said after Headmaster Chow left, "I have a bad feeling about this." On such a hot day, Principal Chen suddenly felt a chill. However, Yi Qian leisurely walked out of the library and read the original English classic that she had borrowed. She took a slow stroll from 9 in the morning until 11 in the afternoon. She was still strolling by Swan Lake in the province's No. 1 middle school. Swan Lake was an old scene that had been preserved from the flames of war. The surface of the lake was clear and sparkling. Fish could be seen swimming in the clear water. The willow trees on the banks swayed gently in the wind. Chapter 124. Birds flew across the surface of the lake from one side, and landed lightly on the other side of the lake in the ripples. Yi Qian sat on a stone bench and looked at the picturesque scenery. He raised his head and covered his face with a book to block the sunlight that shone through the willow branches. Feeling the cool breeze by Swan Lake, he felt peaceful and had no other thoughts. "Yi Qian?" The peace was broken. Yi Qian didn't respond. He closed his eyes and refused to be disturbed. Provincial First High School used to be Gao Yang's school. He came back just to accompany Yi Ying. The two of them whispered as they walked along the embankment. They saw someone sitting comfortably under the green willows. The slender figure was like a scene in a painting. Yi Ying secretly bit her lip and didn't say anything. She just waited to see how Gao Yang would respond. "We're going to the cafeteria now. Let's go together?" Perhaps he was used to Yi Qian's indifference. Gao Yang's eyes flashed with a hint of helplessness. He said lightly, "The cafeteria is a bit far. Let's go together." It would be rude if she didn't answer. Although, she didn't mind being rude in front of him. She took away the heavy English original book that blocked the sunlight and opened her eyes. There was a faint alienation in her dark eyes. "Oh, I know how to get there." She patted the hard-cover book. "You guys go first. I still have to read for a while." "Read for a while?" Yi Ying's gaze fell on the thick English classic. She seemed to have heard a joke. She laughed and said, "I really want to know. Can you understand it?" Gao Yang glanced at it. A Ferry to Arms was translated into Chinese as A Farewell to Arms. It was the early masterpiece of the famous American writer Ernest Hemingway. It was regarded as a classic in modern literature. This book was based on Hemingway's own experiences in the war. It was a sad and moving elegy with war and love as the main theme. Provincial First High School's library has a lot of high-quality books. Your A Ferry to Arms is the original. Reading more can improve your English. Gao Yang, who was fluent in American English, did not doubt that Yi Qian could understand it. He had seen it in the previous English exam. Yi Ying had originally intended to embarrass Yi Qian, but in the end, she received his pertinent advice. Feeling uncomfortable, she smiled and said, "That's good. If there's anything you don't understand, can't you ask Gao Yang?" "Yi Qian, we're from the same school. Let's go to the cafeteria for a meal and talk about tomorrow's exams." "Is it that difficult?" "It's not difficult. I just don't want to be with you guys." Their relationship was already like this. Did he expect her to have anything good to say? Yi Qian smiled as he looked at Yi Ying, whose words were full of sarcasm. He said slowly, "Moreover, we both know that we have nothing to talk about. Why do we have to put on an act?" "Sorry, I'm a more honest person. If there's something I don't like or hate, I'll say it directly. I'm not like Yi Ying, who likes to destroy peace." The only thing missing was the word, hypocrite, pasted on Yi Ying's forehead. Moreover, the two people she hated were together, and they were even going to the cafeteria to eat together. Sigh, she would vomit while eating. Yi Qian. Hearing that she was mocking her hypocrisy, Yi Ying was embarrassed and angry. She looked at the boy beside her in panic. When she saw that Gao Yang's expression was just as ugly, she suppressed her panic and smiled. "Then we can't be friends anymore. Yi Qian, remember, you're the one who rejected our friendship. Next time, you'd better explain clearly to others." Whenever she thought about what Principal Chen said last time, she felt suffocated. Chapter 125. I'm not rejecting you, but... Yi Qian paused intentionally and saw Yi Ying's expression suddenly become unnatural. She looked at him cautiously, afraid that he would say something unfavorable to her. Gao Yang, who had been rebuffed, pulled Yi Ying's wrist, glanced at Yi Qian, and said coldly, "Let's go." Since she didn't want to see him, then let's just leave. After what happened at noon, Yi Qian's ears were much quieter when he met the two of them again in the afternoon. The other students were immersed in their revision in the provincial first high school, but Yi Qian, who had already relaxed during the day, didn't enter the classroom. At 5:30 p.m., the sunset covered the horizon like a piece of brocade. Walking in the golden sunset, they walked out of the school gate with light step. Tonight, they were going to the shooting range to practice moving targets. It was the training range of the provincial first high school, which was only an hour's drive away. An inconspicuous black car with a red flag was parked at the gate. The car was inconspicuous, but the license plate was conspicuous. It was the license plate of the Southern Province Military District. Inside the car, Xia Jinyuan saw Yi Qian looking left and right through the rearview mirror. His handsome face smiled, opened the door, and elegantly got out of the car. "Student Yi, look over here." Seeing Xia Jinyuan in casual clothes, which lacked the coldness of a soldier, but was more languid and casual, Yi Qian's instinctive reaction was, "Let's go. Girl, get in." Then, Principal Chen leaned out of the car, smiled, and waved for her to come over. Yi Qian, who wanted to leave and had already retreated to the school gate, naturally took a step back and calmly walked over. Xia Jinyuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This was troublesome, this girl was avoiding him like he was a snake. The air conditioning in the car was very strong, but after listening to Xia Jinyuan's words, Yi Qian didn't feel cold at all. Her bright eyes stared at Xia Jinyuan without blinking. Although she couldn't calm down, she still said calmly, "How can I help you? During the whole process, I need to do something. Did you see that?" This was the little girl who dared to face the criminal alone, dared to fight side by side with him in the night rain, and was not afraid at all. "Yi Qian, once you agree, do you know that you will be in danger at any time?" He looked at her deeply, but there was a faint smile on his thin lips. "Moreover, if there is any danger, we may not be able to support you immediately." When it came to serious matters, she was no longer trying to hide it from him. Sigh. He had to admit that this bold girl had a spirit of adventure, but she was not impulsive. It was indeed reassuring. Yi Qian didn't answer immediately, but looked at him with a half-smile. When she saw that Xia Jinyuan's gaze was slightly restrained and his expression was a little unnatural, she slowly said, "Captain Xia, the reason you came to me, other than believing in me, is that you think I'm the best choice, right?" Principal Chen was already laughing out loud. "Captain Xia, oh Captain Xia, Yi Qian was groomed by me and a first-rank sergeant. You're asking her if she's afraid or not, and if she's in danger. You're asking the wrong question." Then, he said to Yi Qian, "Girl, everything is fraught with danger, but the most important thing is how you're going to resolve it. Working with the military and having contact with the international police, I don't want you to miss out on such a good opportunity to practice. Although I'm also very worried. But, girl, worry and fear are like stones on the ground. You have to step on them, and you'll be able to step over them steadily. As a soldier, even if there is a mountain of knives and a sea of fire in front of you, you have to move forward." Chapter 126. For this exam, Yi Qian had to give it his all. He had to pass and become one of the 12 students representing the country. Xia Jinyuan had participated in the World Mathematical Olympiad held in England. Even though it had been 6 years, he could still impart some of his experience to Yi Qian. During the 1-hour walk from school to the shooting range, Yi Qian communicated with him seriously. Occasionally, their eyes would meet, making it so that Principal Chen couldn't interrupt. The next day, more than 200 students entered the exam hall after going through a stricter inspection than the college entrance exam. This time, the exams for the 3rd and 2nd years were separated. Yi Qian walked slowly to the exam hall and saw Gao Yang and Yi Ying standing at the door. The boy had his head down, the girl had her head up. They were talking about something. "Please make way." Yi Qian walked over and stood at the door blocked by the two of them. He said calmly, "Or, you can talk outside." "Thank you." Yi Ying glanced at her with a hint of contempt in her eyes. She didn't walk away and said to Gao Yang, "Hurry up and go to the exam hall. I'm fine here. Thank you for tutoring me every night. No matter what, I'll do my best." Ha! Unlike some people who think they're so great that they don't even study in the classroom every night. Okay. After the exam, wait for me in front of the flower bed downstairs. Gao Yang moved sideways to let Yi Qian pass between the two of them. His gaze slowly and consciously fell over, and he saw an almost perfect side profile pass by his eyes. Yi Qian's gaze was cold and straight. He didn't look around or look at anyone else as he walked into the classroom. Indifference, disregard. She could really do it. Gao Yang's gaze brushed past Yi Qian's face. He lowered his eyes and pursed his lips. He turned around and left the exam hall. Just you wait, Yi Qian. I'll embarrass you so much that you won't be able to show your face in school. After he left, Ying quickly caught up with Yi Jian. She kept the smile on her face as she brushed past Yi Jian. She said softly with a gloomy expression, "I will make you regret it completely." Yi Qian smiled and glanced at her casually. He didn't even bother to reply and sat down on the seat with his name on it. Looking at Yi Ying's gloomy face, he knew that ignoring someone was always more infuriating than acknowledging them. When the mathematics test papers were handed out, the students could already hear the sound of gasping. Difficult, these were extremely difficult questions. Yi Qian glanced at the teacher who came in with the chalk box and laser pointer. His dark eyes narrowed slightly. This exam didn't seem to be that simple. It wouldn't continue like an ordinary exam. Her intuition had always been good. About 10 minutes later, Yi Qian, who had just finished writing side A, suddenly heard the invigilator say, "Please listen carefully." The invigilator didn't give the examinees any time to react. The invigilator read out a set of questions. Before any of the students could pull their minds away from the test papers, Yi Qian put down her pen and stood up to answer the questions accurately. Correct. Yi Qian sat down under the teacher's approving gaze and continued to answer the questions on both sides of the CD. After she answered and sat down, the other students finally understood what was going on. This was indeed a very special exam. Not only did it require a written exam, but they also had to be wary of the teacher's occasional oral questions. Maintaining the frequency of one oral answer every 2 minutes had already caused many students to be completely distracted. They were so nervous that they couldn't even hold their pens properly, let alone answer the questions. Yi Qian didn't give Yi Ying a chance to stand up. Or rather, she didn't give the other students a chance at all. When she answered the teacher's questions, the pen in her hand didn't stop moving. Yi Qian's existence imperceptibly brought a lot of pressure to all the students. Chapter 127. By the time the math exam was over, a few girls had already walked out of the classroom in tears. Yi Qian looked at them and sighed softly in his heart. There were only 12 students in the entire country, so she had to pass. After the 2 exams in the morning, the top 10 students' names and scores were announced on the radio. It could be said that the top 10 students all got full marks, but according to the time taken to answer the questions, Yi Qian was far ahead. Crack! Ying broke a ballpoint pen in half. Her face was gloomy as she pressed her lips together. Her originally beautiful eyes were filled with malice. I heard that Yi Qian is a student from a town's middle school. Oh my God, even the students from the province's first high school can't compare to him. He handed in his paper too quickly. I was sitting on his left, but he had already handed in his paper before I could even finish my paper. A few students walked past Yi Ying with rueful expressions on their faces, and the words that drifted over tormented Yi Ying even more. Jealousy, resentment caused her delicate and pretty facial features to twist like an evil witch's, emitting a dense chill. What are you thinking about? Gao Yang walked over with a bottle of mineral water in his hand. He saw Yi Ying standing motionless under the scorching sun from afar. She seemed to be thinking about something, but she was completely unaware that she was being baked in the sun. Yi Ying's shoulders moved slightly. She turned around, her pretty face showing only faint disappointment. Yi Qian won. I lost. What should I do, Gao Yang? I've disappointed you. Her previous confidence was gone. The sadness she revealed made Gao Yang feel that the girl in front of him was so real, and not fake. There's no such thing as Yi Ying. If the world is a pyramid, then there will always be some people standing at the top and some at the bottom. Gao Ying pointed out realistically. His intention was to let Ying see through it and not to worry too much. Who knew that after Ying heard this, she almost lost her composure. Did he mean that Yi Qian was at the top of the pyramid and she was at the bottom? Again, you didn't lose, and you didn't disappoint me. Do your best, Ying. Gao Yang did not lower his head to look at the girl's expression. His heart was no calmer than Yi Qian's. Or rather, no student could remain calm after hearing Yi Qian's score and exam time. Unfortunately, Ying didn't listen to him at all. She said goodbye to Gao Yang with a gloomy heart and threw the broken ballpoint pen into the trash can. She didn't go back to the dormitory immediately. Instead, she walked toward the school's canteen with a gloomy face. Just wait and see. She would definitely not allow this wretched girl to continue like this. The students were shocked, and the teachers from the various cities were no exception. Yi Qian seemed to have appeared out of nowhere. Not only did he crush the students, he also crushed the teachers ruthlessly. Xia Jinyuan, who had been paying attention to the results, heard about Yi Qian's results on the radio for 2 consecutive days. Looking at the calm and confident girl in front of him, his thin lips curved into a smile. Even his unfathomable eyes were filled with amusement. No wonder Principal Chun said that you don't have to attend classes at night for the next 15 days. Yi Qian didn't know about this yet. When he heard this, his dark eyes lit up slightly. He looked at the dangerous man who had appeared in front of him for 2 consecutive days and asked cautiously, "How did you find out about it before me?" The things she cared about were always so interesting. Also, her little face was full of vigilance. He couldn't help but want to tease her. Chapter 128. Do you want to know why? The corners of his lips were slightly raised. His noble and elegant aura was not suppressed by his military uniform. Even a slight smile was enough to make one feel that he was extraordinarily noble. The contours of his side profile were very perfect. When he smiled, the corners of his eyes were raised, revealing a trace of faintly discernible wickedness. It was the kind of man's charm that would make a woman's heart beat faster and make her gaze involuntarily follow him. Perhaps Xia Jinyuan himself was aware of this, so at most, his smile was just slightly raised, and his deep eyes were still calm. But when facing Yi Qian, there were always many indulgences and exceptions. As long as he was not on a mission, he would not restrain his charm at all. Instead, he would naturally face her and use his true self to communicate with her. Yi Qian frowned slightly, then smiled and said, "I don't want to know. In any case, I already know the result I want." Her reply caused the smile on his thin lips to deepen. A dark light flashed through his slightly raised black eyes, but it only lasted for a few breaths before he calmed down. Even though he liked to tease her and see the lively expression on her face, he also knew that he had to stop before he went too far. Principal Chun said that although he hopes that you can participate in more actual combat, he is still worried. Faced with a girl who would wrap herself in layers of hard shells whenever she felt that something was wrong, he could only be more patient. "I will wait for you at the school gate at 6 o'clock. For the next week, I will be here to train with you." Hearing this, Yi Qian secretly took a deep breath before saying, "I hope I didn't cause you any trouble." In other words, for the next 7 nights, he would be teaching her. "It's not troublesome. In fact, I am very interested," Xia Jinyuan said with interest. As he leisurely admired the subtle changes in her expression, his deep, dark eyes did not conceal his interest in teaching her at all. However, Yi Qian had a headache when he spoke in such a sarcastic tone. It was as if he was trying to express something, but in fact, he was just overthinking it. Seeing her frown, Xia Jinyuan restrained his expression and revealed a coldness that could not be ignored. "You can go to the cafeteria to eat first. If you don't appear at the school gate at 6 o'clock sharp, you can take the car to the shooting range." Just as Yi Qian was about to speak, she suddenly felt a dark gaze fall on her. As she nodded in response, she turned her body slightly, and caught the gaze from the corner of her eye. There is someone behind the tree to your right. She is a student from town middle school. She is a girl with shoulder-length hair. Xia Jinyuan raised his hand and placed it on Yi Jian's shoulder, creating a false impression that he was pushing Yi Jian away so that she would turn around and go back to school. With his action, Yi Zichen was directly facing the wudong tree in the right direction. With just one look, Yi Qian knew who the girl hiding behind the tree was. Other than Ying, who else could it be? Ying hid behind the tree and stared unblinkingly at the man in front of her who was acting intimately with Yi Qian. The corners of her mouth curved into a sinister and cold smile. Unfortunately, she did not have a camera. Otherwise, she could take a picture and post it on the school's blackboard. Even if Principal Chen came forward, he would not be able to explain why Yi Qian was acting so intimately with a man. Chapter 129. At 6 o'clock, the last rays of the setting sun disappeared, leaving only the fiery red clouds behind. Since it was summer vacation, Yizhong High School was particularly quiet in the sunset. Even the 2 pairs of mandarin ducks reared in Swan Lake were resting on the water plants on the shore, rubbing their necks and enjoying the peaceful time. Yi Qian walked out of the school, opened the car door and got into the car. It was exactly 6 o'clock, not a minute or a second later. She was so punctual that Xia Jinyuan, who was in the car, felt a little helpless. This girl was way too punctual. She got into the car on time, not a minute or a second later. Just how much did she not want to spend another minute with him? You're so punctual. Aren't you afraid of being delayed midway? After starting the car, Xia Jinyuan smiled and asked Yi Qian, who was still in her school uniform, "You've been so punctual for 3 consecutive days. Yi Qian, just how much do you not want to spend another minute with me?" It was the same when she came back. She would get out of the car and say, "Thank you for your hard work. Goodbye." She would leave him with her back facing him without looking back. On the first day, he hoped that she would turn around and wave at him after entering the school gate. On the second day, he hoped that she would show up 10 minutes early. On the third day, he didn't expect her to do so. When this girl was heartless, he would be so angry that his liver would hurt whenever he tried to be calculative. Sometimes, Xia Jinyuan's smile was faintly discernible. It was like a ripple, but also like a deep ancient well. There was always an unfathomable mystery to it. He was originally an extremely noble and elegant man. When he smiled at her from time to time, Yi Jian only felt that, every time she was with him, the air around her would become so thin that when she took a breath, it would be filled with the faint mint smell that belonged to him. She had always been able to deal with other people calmly, but in front of Xia Jinyuan, she only felt uneasy. When he heard this, he smiled and maintained his usual calmness. He said calmly, "I'm very punctual. Captain Xia can also be punctual at 6 o'clock every day. You don't have to wait too long. If there's any delay midway, I won't let myself miss the appointment. But I wanted to come earlier to wait for you. What should I do?" When the traffic lights changed, Xia Jinyuan, who had stopped steadily at the zebra crossing, turned his head sideways and saw Yi Qian's indifferent expression. He raised his eyebrows slightly and said, "Do you want me to turn up the air conditioner? You seem to be very hot." Of course it was hot. She had run all the way here at the right time. Even though the sun had set, it was still warm on such a hot day. What's more, the man sitting next to her always liked to say things that could cause misunderstandings. As an adult woman, wasn't it normal for her to be nervous? After repeating the words, 20 years old, several times in his heart, Yi Qian finally got rid of the initial awkwardness he felt every time they met. When the green light turned green, Yi Jian turned back and smiled at Xia Jinyuan, who was still releasing his masculine charm. "Of course it's hot after running all the way here. What should I do? In order not to let Captain Xia leave me behind, I have to work harder. Xia Jinyuan smiled at her. That smile was like a blooming flower, enchanting yet pure. Her dark eyes were so beautiful that even the sunset couldn't compare to her beauty. Just like that, when he was caught off guard, her smile and her question of "What should I do?" hit him hard in the eyes. It was as if it had left a mark in his heart. "Captain Xia, if you don't start the car soon, the traffic police uncle will be here." His absent-mindedness made the corners of Yi Jian's lips curl up slightly. Even her dark eyes rippled with a faint smile. Humph! She knew how to use his moves too. Chapter 130. From her slightly proud smile, he could tell that she had also made a move against him. TSK, TSK, TSK. As expected of a little fox, she knew how to counterattack so quickly. "This is getting interesting, Yi Qian." Xia Jinyuan raised his eyebrows and replied with a faint smile. Then, he started the car under the urging of the people behind him. The little girl was smart, but she didn't know that men were born hunters. And he, Xia Jinyuan, was one of the best hunters. The more cunning she was, the more he was interested in her. Yi Qian didn't understand, so naturally, he didn't know what men meant by hunting like. However, he subconsciously felt that the interesting in his words was already beyond the scope of normal communication. To her, the back and forth between an elegant and dangerous man was indeed interesting. Diamo raised her eyebrows slightly. She tilted her head and rested her elbows on the car window. She supported her chin with her hand and smiled as she looked at the man who had an elegant and arrogant expression. She said slowly, "What should I do? I also found it interesting." "Captain Xia, who do you think is more interested in who?" "Who is more interested in who? It's hard to say, at least for now." Xia Jinyuan raised the corners of his mouth and smiled lazily. "Yi Qian, who do you think is more interested in who, a 14-year-old you and a 20-year-old adult man? Who is more interested in who?" The Chinese language was so broad and profound. A sentence would have different meanings when spoken by different people. Yi Qian narrowed his eyes slightly. She wasn't only 14. Earlier, when he said interesting, there were some things that she didn't catch. But at this moment, when she saw the look in his eyes, which were as vast as the starry sky, she understood where this elegant man's interest in her came from. But if this was a hunt, she didn't mind giving it a try. She wanted to see who would become the prey. She straightened her body and leaned directly to the side of the man who was driving. Her eyes, which seemed to be rippling like water, were suffused with bits of starlight. She looked at him with a smile and stared at him without blinking. "Captain Xia, I'm not like you. I'm only 14 and I don't know anything. You say who is interested in whom? What does this interest mean? Can you explain it clearly?" She was so close to him, so close that her orchid-like breath swayed at the tip of his nose. Her beautiful black and white eyes were as pure as the stars, but also had the allure of a woman. It was this unique beauty that made him unconsciously think of her as a 14-year-old underage girl. "Are you tempted?" No, he was very clear that what he meant by "a little interesting" had nothing to do with his heart being moved. It was interest. It was standing in the position of a man and becoming interested in a woman. At the same time, he was also very clear that the woman he was interested in was only 14 years old. Therefore, his interest in her was pure and had nothing to do with lust. He just wanted to protect her as she grew up and waited for her to blossom. "Silly girl, don't think too much." Xia Jinyuan raised his hand and gently pinched the tip of her beautiful nose. His clear voice was 3 parts serious and 7 parts joking as he said, "I am interested in you, but it's not the kind of interest you think it is. Little girl, don't think too much." Chapter 131. No one seemed to be able to guess what kind of person Xia Jinyuan was. He was so mysterious that it made people afraid, but at the same time, he was so real. He always had a way to make people obey him. While others were happy to be close to him, he would pull them apart again in an instant. Facing a man who could control all his emotions so easily, Yi Qian thought to herself, how hurtful. The tip of Yi Qian's nose was still warm from his fingertips. Her expression didn't change as she smiled and said, I'm sorry, I didn't think too much. First of all, I don't have time. Second of all, I'm young and don't understand. Third of all, I remember what Captain Xia said before. I need to keep a distance from men. Captain Xia is also a man, and a man who is even more outstanding than a little boy. Therefore, I need to keep a distance from Captain Xia. The little girl was so eloquent. Her trap was no worse than an adult's. She even knew how to shut him up. However, when the car screeched to a stop and the handbrake was pulled, Xia Jinyuan was already so close that she could see how thick his long eyelashes were. His deep and dark gaze fell straight on her hibiscus face that was smiling yet not smiling, and he laughed softly. No, you can keep a distance from all the men in the world, but you can't keep a distance from me. His voice was cold and clear, and when he suddenly spoke, it sounded like the soft notes of a guqin. That kind of low voice was so unique that every sentence and every word was branded with the elegant charm of a man named Xia Jinyuan. Alcohol could make people drunk, and he could do the same. Yi Qian didn't panic because of his sudden approach. On the contrary, the more it was like this, the more vigilant she was, and the calmer her eyes became. Of course I can't keep a distance from you, Captain Xia, because… Since he was so close to her, she didn't mind getting closer to him. Yi Jian, who was speaking with a faint smile, leaned forward a little more. Not only did it allow the two to breathe together, even the tip of their noses could touch each other's. Because, I understand what Captain Xia means. He had to admit that the little girl was really cunning. Her actions made it impossible for him to take another step forward. This secret contest. What should he do? It seemed like he had lost. Looking at her dark eyes that were as pure as the night and focused on him, as if he was the only one who existed, Xia Jinyuan's thin lips curled into a meaningful smile. He deliberately slowed down the speed of his speech and chuckled softly like a lover. That's what I mean now, but I don't know if it will be the same in the future. He had always been uninterested in women and things. Now that he met a young girl, he couldn't bear to see her being taken away by others. It really gave him a headache. It's unknown whether we'll meet again in the future, Yi Jian thought to herself, but she kept a smile on her face and said, Who knows what will happen in the future? The most important thing now is to ask Captain Xia to guide me well. If they invited him to guide them, would they still be able to keep their distance? Obviously, it was impossible. What he said was exactly the same as what she said. The conversation was full of ambiguity, but it finally ended with the two of them keeping their minds on high alert. When the car drove into the provincial garrison, Yi Qian heard powerful shouts coming from the training ground. Chapter 132. The soldiers were sweating on the training field, using their youth to build steel walls and iron arms, waiting for the country to use them. As long as Yi Jian set foot on this land that was filled with dignity and passion at the same time, she would become extraordinarily different. Her eyes were filled with the coldness of a soldier. She liked it here. She liked the feeling of victory when she put on her training uniform and climbed over obstacles with the soldiers, passing through layers of barbed wire. She liked to sweat on the training field, laugh with the soldiers, bleed with them, and cry with them. Soldiers were trained for 1,000 days to be used in a single moment. If you didn't get close to the world of the soldiers, you would never know how the young soldiers were trained and how they raced against time. The soldiers in their training uniforms were sitting in a neat circle on the training field. Xia Jinyuan was also one of the spectators. He quietly watched the girl who dared to wrestle with a soldier from Inner Mongolia on the training field. There was a faint smile in his deep black eyes as he focused all of his attention on her. He had already seen Yi Qian's training content. It was divided into 5 major trainings. The first one was weapons training. The second one was engineering training. The third one was communications training. The fourth one was commander's training. The fifth one was medical training. The fifth one was placed last because Uncle Jen and Principal Chen weren't good at it. At the same time, they wouldn't be able to understand it immediately. The first major weapons training was Yi Qian's current focus. It was to learn the performance of light weapons from the country and other countries. This included pistols, semi-automatic rifles, machine guns, mortars, anti-tank weapons, and anti-aircraft weapons. They would also undergo training in tactics, indirect firepower attacks, the use of portable anti-aircraft weapons, weapon disassembly, bomb disassembly, and other dangerous A-level training. Sniper training was attached to the first major training. So far, Yi Qian had learned the best from the first major training. After a week of training, Xia Jinyuan had a good understanding of Yi Qian's skills. Just as Principal Chen said, other than her lack of strength, she had reached a good standard in all other aspects. He avoided the first major training and tried his best to improve Yi Qian's combat skills. At the same time, he also had to teach her how to scout, defend, and non-traditional combat, assassination-type combat. It was already late at night, and the deafening shouts on the training ground had come to an end. After warming up, Yi Qian entered the training under Xia Jinyuan's guidance. It was already 10 o'clock at night when Yi Qian walked out of the provincial garrison's training ground. It had been like this for 7 consecutive nights. When Yi Qian returned to the provincial No. 1 middle school, it was exactly 11 o'clock at night when he returned to the dormitory through the back door. Survival, escape, resistance, and evasion are not only used in battle tactics, but they can also be used in combat. Xia Jinyuan, who had changed into a combat uniform, exuded an aura as cold as a sword. Even his dark eyes were filled with the glint of a sword. As he drove, his voice was solemn and cold as he steadily made a big turn. Digest what I've taught you in the past 7 days. I'll check on you when you come to Beijing. Yi Qian nodded gently and said seriously, I will. When are you leaving tomorrow? He had taught her diligently for 7 nights. He was leaving the next day, so it was only polite for him to ask, Why? Are you going to send me off? Xia Jinyuan smiled and glanced at her. He was not used to this little girl being polite. If you want to send me off, I'm afraid you won't be able to go back to school tonight. Chapter 133. There was no way the car could drive directly to the back gate of the school, so it could only stop at a residential building. Inside the sealed car after the engine was turned off, their breathing could be heard clearly. Yi Qian unlocked the car, opened the door, and jumped out. He chuckled at Xia Jinyuan, who was still sitting in the car. Don't be too optimistic, Captain Xia. Goodbye, I won't be seeing you off. Similar to all the key schools in the province, there were residential buildings near No. 1 middle school. The back gate of the school was built in the 1980s, and was only 7 stories tall. There were rows of buildings, and the distance between each building was only a meter wide. Every night, Xia Jinyuan would park the car and personally send Yi Qian to school. Tonight was no exception. As she chuckled, he elegantly got out of the car. After closing the car door, he looked across the car at the girl who was standing under the streetlight. His thin lips curved into a sexy smile. Not even a hug before we part? We hugged enough on the training field. Why, Captain Xia still can't forget about it. Who didn't know how to tease people? After following him for a few days, no matter how stupid she was, she would have learned it. Yi Jian's eyes curved into crescents, and there was a sly look in her eyes. When we get to the capital, we will have plenty of opportunities to hug each other. The girl's little mouth was getting more and more powerful. It seemed like he had to restrain himself. Otherwise, if he led her astray and made her tease other boys, he would definitely be angry. After the summer break, this old-fashioned residential building, which was built in the 1980s and only had 7 floors, was dark except for a few scattered lights. The two of them walked past a few residential buildings. Almost at the same time, their gazes fell on the same direction. With a cold look in his eyes, Yi Qian said to him, "It's not far. I can go by myself." It didn't feel good to be watched for several nights in a row. "You want to go up and take a look alone?" Xia Jinyuan didn't stop, nor did he agree. He only sent her there. "If you want to go up, I can accompany you. I want to go and take a look. I've been keeping watch for a few nights. I want to ask the higher-ups if they're tired." Yi Qian chuckled. Suddenly, his eyes turned cold. His gaze was sharp as he looked at the window where only a single lamp was lit. Behind the window, someone was so scared that his hands trembled. He reflexively put down the curtains, grabbed the cup on the desk, and gulped down the water. It was too frightening. Yi Qian's gaze was murderous. It was so cold that her heart almost jumped out of her chest. About 3 minutes later, the frightened man gently patted his chest to calm himself down. Then, he gently lifted the curtain. He was about to raise the camera in his hand and record the scene of a man and a woman coming back from a walk in the middle of the night. Just as she opened the curtains slightly, under the illumination of the table lamp, she saw a face suddenly approaching from outside the window. "Ah!" Liao Jian, who was holding the camera, screamed in horror as if he had seen a ghost. In the end, he couldn't hold on to the camera in his hand. With a bang, it fell heavily to the ground. He didn't know if it was broken. The window was completely open. Yi Qian pushed off the windowsill and stood on the windowsill. He then pulled the curtains open and saw Liao Jian, who was standing against the wall in shock. He was staring outside in horror. At his feet was an imported camera. Chapter 134. Yi Qian bent over and crawled through the unsecured window. He calmly jumped into the room and bent over to pick up the camera under Liao Jian's shocked gaze. Yi Qian didn't communicate with him at all. He picked up the camera, stepped on the desk, bent over, and jumped down lightly. He disappeared from the room. Liao Jian stood there motionless, his eyes fixed on the camera. When he saw Yi Qian jump down from the window, he shivered and ran to the desk as if his soul had returned to him. He propped himself up with both hands and looked down. He saw Yi Qian waving at him under the streetlight. Liao Jian's face turned even paler. He didn't dare to look any further. He reached out with trembling hands and slammed the window shut. He collapsed onto the floor. How did Yi Qian jump down from the 7th floor? How did he climb from the 1st floor to the 7th floor in the blink of an eye? An unprecedented fear filled Liao Jian's heart. He regretted agreeing to Yi Ying's request to come all the way to First High School to spy on someone he couldn't even handle. No, he had to go back to town tomorrow. He couldn't let Yi Qian keep an eye on him. Downstairs, Yi Qian said something. Xia Jinyuan raised his eyes and looked at the dark window. He pursed his thin lips and said in a deep voice, "I'm afraid that your sister is hiding something. Since you suspect that she's trying to stop you from qualifying, Yi Qian, you have to be careful in school." He had seen fights between girls before. They happened in the dark and were impossible to guard against. The next day, Yi Ying sat in the classroom and stared at the camera on the desk. Even though her palm-sized face pretended to be calm, her trembling eyelashes betrayed her feelings. "I'm sorry, it's broken. Please explain it to Liao Jian when you see him." Yi Qian's clear eyes stared at Yi Ying, who had lowered her head in guilt. He said coldly, "Please return this broken toy to Liao Jian. He probably won't ask me to pay for it." Yi Ying gently closed her eyes. When she raised her eyes, there was a haze in her eyes. "Return it to whoever you took it from." "What do you mean by giving it to me?" please move aside, I still need to study. I also want to hand it over to classmate Liao personally, but thinking about how I scared him last night, I reckon he won't dare to see me now. But he will definitely come. Yi Qian's finger tapped lightly on the desk. His calm tone faintly revealed a coldness that made Yi Ying panic. If you don't want any accidents to happen before the exam, Yi Ying, you'd better behave yourself. Yi Ying's heart trembled slightly as she bit her lower lip and didn't say anything else. Her words were full of threats and were as cold as icicles. At the same time, he heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, they both had to face an exam. Otherwise, with the wretched girl's current temper, she probably wouldn't let him have a good time. After realizing that she had found an unreliable person to help her, Yi Ying vented all her anger on Liao Jian. She scolded him so much that she even broke a camera that cost a few thousand yuan. Liao Jian originally wanted to remind her to be careful of Yi Qian, but after scolding her, Liao Jian, whose eyes were about to spit fire, left just as he was about to slap her. Remind my ass. If you have the ability, go deal with it yourself. After this incident, Yi Ying really did behave and didn't dare to do anything else. Chapter 135. The 15 days of intensive training ended on July 17th. That night, the 12 students left for the capital under the lead of the teachers. All the students had not yet recovered from the excitement of coming to the heart of the motherland, the capital. From July 19th to July 23rd, the 5-day test was held directly. When they arrived in the capital, they found out that the provinces send out students from the 2nd and 3rd grades. However, the famous schools in the capital not only had high school, but also middle school. On the first day, 4 out of the 12 students were eliminated. On the second day, 3 more were eliminated. On the third day, 2 more were eliminated. Out of the 12 students, only Yi Qian, Yi Ying, and Gao Yang were left. The atmosphere in the examination hall was quite tense. 4 days of difficult written tests, oral tests, questions snatching, and so on. Even the usually calm Yi Qian's palms were sweating. However, whenever it was her turn to fight, she would straighten her back and calmly look at her opponent with her dark eyes. She would calmly and quickly answer the teacher's questions. There were a total of 14 teachers who had been awarded the title of National Outstanding Teacher. The physics, chemistry, and mathematics teachers took turns to throw out questions, bombarding each class with questions. It was not a one-to-one test at all. It was a cross-examination where questions from each class appeared at any time. Correct answer. Correct answer. Correct answer. Every time Yi Qian answered consecutively, the invigilator's voice would be particularly loud. After 16 tests, this beautiful girl with bright eyes was firmly in first place with a 100% correct rate. Even the 2 high school students who had participated in the mathematical Olympiad 3 years ago were suppressed by her. Gao Yang was also very outstanding. His correct rate had always been in the top 3 in the junior high school. On the other hand, Yi Ying repeatedly made mistakes after entering the cross-examination. Wrong answer, 3 wrong questions in a row. Student Yi Ying from Fujian Town in the southern province, eliminated. After 30 minutes of suppressive questions, Yi Ying sat in the examination hall with a pale face. However, her eyes were fixed on Yi Qian, who was still fighting with 7 students from the 3 famous schools in the capital. Watching her eliminate a student effortlessly and hearing her face the English teacher's questions in English, her fluent English was as natural as her mother tongue. There was no pause at all. She really knew how to speak English. Damn it! Why didn't he know about it? She saw the smiles of approval on the faces of all the teachers present. Those smiles were for Yi Qian. She was smiling at the wretched girl whom she had always looked down upon and despised. Yi Ying's sharp nails dug deep into her palms, but she did not feel any pain. She only felt that Yi Qian, standing on the exam platform, was such an eyesore that she wished she could get rid of him as soon as possible. What right did an orphan girl have to stand here and receive the attention of all the teachers? What right did he have to stand here and receive everyone's admiration? If it wasn't for her, she would definitely be able to qualify. It was that damned Yi Qian who had given her so much pressure, causing her to lose time and again. On the exam platform, Yi Qian answered the English teacher's question with a slight smile. That smile naturally revealed his tenacity and confidence, which instantly attracted everyone's attention. Her memory is far better than all the students here. We have no reason to stop an outstanding student from leaving the country. Yi Qian from Fujian Town High School in the southern province has qualified. After a short discussion among several senior teachers, the first to qualify was not a student from the capital, but a student from the depths of the mountains. Chapter 136. The applause came from the competitors, the teachers, and the candidates who had already been eliminated. Yi Qian, who was the first to advance, stood on the exam platform with a decent smile on his face. In the face of the thunderous applause, he calmly bowed and said, "Thank you." His calm demeanor was even more in line with the teachers' hearts. When Principal Chow, who had been accompanying him all this time, heard Yi Qian's name, he unscrewed the bottle cap with trembling hands and took 3 pills in a row. In the capital, in the most heavily guarded military compound, Xia Jinyuan was wearing a short-sleeved uniform and a bow tie as he walked down the stairs. He was wearing a military summer uniform, which was tucked into his perfectly ironed dark green military trousers and tied with a brown leather belt, which perfectly accentuated his sexy and muscular waist. His broad shoulders, slender legs, and every step he took was noble and elegant. Everything about him was like a gentleman's elegance. Someone once commented that Xia Jinyuan, who was wearing a military summer uniform, had a kind of uniform temptation that made people want to turn into a hooligan and pounce on him to take off his clothes. Other than this uniform temptation, there was no one else. "Dad, I'm going out for a while." When he went downstairs, he saw Commander-in-Chief Xia sitting on the sofa drinking tea and reading the newspaper leisurely. "You should rest early. I might be back later." Commander-in-Chief Xia didn't expect his son to be at home. When he heard the voice behind him, he turned around in surprise and said, "Where did you come from? Why didn't you make a sound?" He also saw that he was wearing a summer uniform. It was obvious that he had specially cleaned up. Commander-in-Chief Xia put down the newspaper and stood up to look at his handsome son with interest. "Oh, the sun rose from the west. You know how to clean up? Going on a date? Which family's girl is she from? If you succeed, bring her home for me to see." Other people's sons could change girlfriends 4 or 5 times a year. Why was it that his son had never brought home a single woman in a year? If it weren't for the fact that he had found some children's dishes in his study room, he would have suspected that his son had spent so much time in the army that he only liked military uniforms and no longer liked women's makeup. Xia Jinyuan lowered his head and looked at his outfit. There was nothing special about it, so he raised his eyebrows and said, "When did I ever dress up? It doesn't count as a date, but it is indeed a meeting with a little girl. Also, don't overthink it. She's a 14-year-old girl, a middle school student." Then he was really overthinking it. Commander-in-Chief Xia immediately lost interest and waved his hand to chase him away. "Go, go, go. Go and have fun. Don't come back for dinner tonight. I'll go to your Uncle Han's house for dinner." Xia Jinyuan had already walked out of the compound. He drove his own car and rushed to his destination. Yi Qian walked out of the exam hall hurriedly towards the school gate. He only had 4 minutes to meet with Xia Jinyuan. If he couldn't leave, he had to run. "Yi Qian." Someone chased after him. He took big steps as if he was afraid that she would leave. "Where are you going now?" Later, Yi Ying and the others will go back. We plan to have dinner outside and send them to the train. Students who failed to make the cut were not allowed to stay in the capital. They were led back to the southern province by the teachers of the provincial number 1 middle school. Gao Yiyang was familiar with the capital. After asking the teacher in charge, they agreed to go to Wangfujing to eat the specialties of the capital. The rest of the students agreed readily. Except for Yi Qian. He had only said a few words to Yi Ying, and she had already disappeared from the scene. Chapter 137. Yi Qian felt helpless when he heard Gao Yang's voice coming from behind him. He was just short of pasting the word reject on his forehead. Why did he still take the initiative to come over and greet him? He thought he had made himself clear the last time, but it was still the same. He turned around and rubbed his temples, feeling a headache coming on. He looked at the handsome young man in front of him and sighed. Classmate Gao, it seems I have to repeat myself. I really don't like. Why don't you like me? Just because I'm pursuing Yi Ying? Gao Yiyang didn't want to hear such words again. Moreover, he didn't understand why she hated him so much. Thinking back, he really couldn't recall doing anything that made her hate him. He didn't want her to treat him like a spring breeze, but he still wanted to be like an ordinary schoolmate and be able to communicate peacefully. He didn't want to be at daggers drawn as soon as he spoke. Yi Qian, who had been interrupted by him, smiled knowingly and praised him. Not bad. At least you know your place. Yi Ying, who couldn't help but walk out after hearing this, acted as if she had discovered a new continent. She seemed to have understood something and walked over with a sneer. Classmate Gao has always had a good reputation in school, but you, Yi Qian, are always against him. Ha, I didn't understand before, but now that you've said it, I understand. He's pursuing me, so you hate him? Can I say that your hatred is born out of love? It sounded quite reasonable. Gao Yang's cold, handsome face looked a little awkward because of her words. He turned to look at Yi Ying and scolded her in a low voice. What nonsense are you saying? Like him? He wasn't stupid enough to not know the difference between love and hate. Yi Qian clearly hated him. It had nothing to do with love. I didn't say anything. Didn't she admit it herself? Yi Ying glanced at him with a smile and chuckled. Gao Yang, what should we do? Why don't you stop pursuing me and just pursue our famous classmate Yi Qian? I don't want to waste the last bit of our sisterhood because of a boy. Acting had always been Yi Ying's specialty. Just like now, her eyes were cold, but she could still pretend to be smiling. Yi Qian sneered and said calmly, Don't. Yi Ying's standards have always been very high. It's not easy for you to find a boy who can catch your eye. Please don't give him to me, I'm afraid. After he finished speaking, he deliberately paused for a moment. He then saw Yi Ying's expression change abruptly. Even her gaze became exceptionally sharp. TSK, TSK, TSK. If you're not that generous, then don't pretend to be. Look at your little face. Look at how scared you are. Yi Qian was teasing Yi Ying as if he was teasing a puppy. With just a few words, he was able to make Yi Ying's emotions fluctuate. He lifted his chin slightly and said to Gao Yang, Have a good talk with your girlfriend. Don't talk about giving in so easily. If you really give it to me, what if I'm bored and take it again? Ha, I'm afraid she'll cry herself to death in the toilet. Also, don't talk to me about sisterhood. It sounds fake. Every word he said didn't leave any face. Every word he said made Ying feel as if she had lost all her face. Yi Ying, who was already so angry that her lungs were about to explode, was wary of Gao Yang's presence. She wanted to maintain her ladylike demeanor, but she didn't want to swallow her anger. She rebuked, Yi Qian, you're really something. Gao Yang isn't an object. You want to snatch him away? That depends on whether he agrees or not. Save some face for yourself. Don't let others look down on you. Chapter 138. Beside them, Gao Yang's expression turned ugly. Ying, she didn't say anything about snatching. You don't have to overthink it. Girls always like to overthink things. He could clearly hear Yi Qian's mockery, but Ying thought that Yi Qian was provoking her. What did he mean by she didn't have to overthink it? Hearing this, Ying laughed coldly. I'm not overthinking it. I've never seen her hate you before. Now that you're walking a little closer to me, she looks disgusted. Isn't this hatred born from love? Hatred born from love? A clear voice with a hint of laughter came slowly. Then, a slender figure strolled in the sunset, gracefully walking over like a god. Hey, little girl, when did you ever hate me? After waiting for 5 minutes, she still hadn't come over. It turned out that she was blocked by someone. When Yi Qian heard that voice and what he said, he felt his head hurt even more. Why did he enter the school? If you still don't come, I'm afraid that you'll be bullied until you cry. Xia Jinyuan's handsome face held a faint smile as he walked over and stood beside Yi Qian. He didn't look at the other two. Instead, he smiled and looked at Yi Qian, who was late for the first time. He raised his hand and intimately flicked his finger on Yi Qian's forehead. You're late today and left me waiting outside for so long. Tell me, how are you going to make it up to me? He couldn't stand it anymore. How could a little girl be so scheming? Every word she said was an attempt to trample on Yi Qian's image. He really couldn't understand what girls were thinking these days. Belittling their classmates like this, could it show that they were virtuous? Yi Qian was already used to Xia Jinyuan flicking his finger on his forehead. He only frowned and rubbed his forehead. Sorry for the delay. It's fine now. Let's go. After saying that, he turned around and walked towards the school gate. Xia Jinyuan couldn't help but laugh. It was only then that he raised his eyes slightly. His cold and sharp gaze swept across the boy who had already pursed his lips tightly, then gently landed on the girl who had subconsciously tightened her grip on the boy's shirt ever since he appeared. He curled his lips mockingly. Even though he didn't say a word, it was enough to make the two of them tense up. His cold gaze, his cold smile. This arrogant man was clearly telling Yi Qian and Gao Yang that he couldn't be bothered to speak to them, to the point where even a glance was beneath him. Xia Jinyuan felt that it was beneath his dignity to argue with children. However, Yi Qian, that narrow-minded girl, would probably be more than happy to settle the score with them. In order to make the little lass feel better, he didn't mind occasionally doing 1 or 2 things that were beneath his dignity. Ha, you're really something. You even managed to seduce a soldier. Ying waited until the two of them were out of sight before she spoke through gritted teeth. She was still afraid. When the soldier in the military uniform swept his cold gaze over her, all the hairs on her body stood on end. She was so afraid that she didn't dare to raise her head. As a result, she couldn't even see what the soldier looked like. After a while, Gao Yang finally looked away. After hearing what she said, he frowned and said in a low voice, "He's not an ordinary soldier. He's a very young major." "A major?" Ying furrowed her pretty brows. "What's a major? You seem to be like me." She was quite afraid and didn't finish her sentence. She felt a little embarrassed to say it out loud. Chapter 139. For Yi Ying, who had never been in contact with military ranks, she naturally didn't know, but Gao Yang knew. Looking at Yi Ying's fearful expression, Gao Yang sighed softly. "I'm as scared as you." "Forget it, it doesn't matter if she doesn't know. If she doesn't want to go, we'll go ourselves." He paused, frowned slightly, and said in a deep voice, "You didn't have to pick on Yi Qian just now. I'm not so stupid that I can't tell the difference between love and hate." At this moment, Yi Ying's beautiful eyes were completely gloomy. After staring for a while, her beautiful eyes were faintly moist, and she revealed a smile that was uglier than crying. "Is that so? Then I'll just treat it as a misunderstanding. I'm sorry, I don't want to go tonight either. Goodbye. She didn't insist on her views in front of him, but instead took all the blame. Coupled with the faint tears in her eyes, it was enough to make a 15-year-old boy like Gao Yang surrender and admit his mistake. Seeing him apologize to her, Ying faintly smiled. She had always known how to use her advantages, and she was also good at manipulating people. Teacher Zhu and the Capital Experimental Middle School's director Li walked out as they spoke. Then, I'll have to trouble you about the tickets, Director Li. Seeing Gao Yang in front, he said a few words to Director Li and then walked over with a smile. When Gao Yang and Ying heard that the Capital Experimental Middle School had already arranged for cars to go to the orchard farm on the outskirts of the capital after the preliminaries for the students to relax, they were stunned. What, you don't believe me? Ha ha ha, I didn't lie to you. Quickly go and inform the other 3 students. Yi Qian doesn't need to go, I'll talk to her. Teacher Zhu patted Gao Yang's shoulder, and the smile on his face deepened. There are only a few days left until the competition. This is specially arranged for the 12 of you to relax. We, ha ha ha, are basking in your glory. Teacher Zhu's gaze lightly glanced at Ying. The 2 of them seemed to be walking very close. Why did it seem like they were in a relationship? You mean that we'll all stay at the farm tonight and will only be back at noon tomorrow? A trace of darkness flashed across Ying's beautiful eyes, and she asked uncertainly, What time will we leave the capital tomorrow? Can you catch the train if you don't come back for one night? Teacher Zhu smiled and said, Don't worry, we'll definitely be able to go home tomorrow. Quick, we agreed to meet in 20 minutes. Let's meet 10 minutes earlier. When Ying saw this, her eyes flickered slightly. She said to Gao Yang impatiently, Then I'll inform the girls. You go inform the boys. After that, he said goodbye to Teacher Zhu and left in a hurry. Not only was her eyes gloomy, but they were also filled with a frightening malice. Yi Qian, who had already walked out of the school, did not immediately get into the car. He looked at the man, who was as straight as a spear, and a trace of amazement flashed in his eyes. In his military uniform, Xia Jinyuan not only raised his temperament to the peak, but he also looked as elegant as jade. He felt that a gentleman should be like this, and his every move was noble and extraordinary. I'm sorry, I can't go out tonight. Just now, Teacher Zhu from the provincial first high school said that the school arranged for the 12 of us to stay at an orchard farm. I didn't refuse. Yi Qian raised his eyes slightly, and quietly concealed his amazement. I can only miss tonight. I'm very sorry. Chapter 140. Her apology only made Xia Jinyuan raise his eyebrows slightly. He smiled and said, If that's the case, we can only do it next time. I originally wanted to take you to see it, because it was something that couldn't be said to outsiders. He bent down slightly. His tall and slender body completely covered Yi Qian's slender figure, like a pine tree sheltering the sun, protecting the still-growing sapling. To see the latest model of our country's artillery shells that are ready to be used in the army. He was so close to her that he could smell the faint fragrance on her body. It wasn't the smell of artificial perfume, but the faint and elegant fragrance of a young girl's body. The little girl's skin was very white, like white jade with a translucent luster. Oh, she had grown a little taller since the first time he saw her, and her body had become slimmer. She already had the graceful bearing of a young girl. Xia Jinyuan's dark eyes darkened slightly, but he didn't bat an eyelid. His gaze lingered on Yi Qian's slender, swan-like neck. It wasn't abrupt, but purely out of appreciation for beauty. In an instant, Yi Qian, who was enveloped by his minty scent, retreated slightly. While she was momentarily moved, she looked up. The moment their eyes met, Yi Qian saw the confident smile on his sexy thin lips, as if she would definitely agree and reject the school's arrangement. Yi Qian, who was also rebellious, saw this and didn't pull away. Instead, she glanced at him from the corner of her eyes. Her clear black and white eyes looked at him with a half-smile. She shook her head and said, "Thank you for the trouble, Captain Xia. I really want to go, but unfortunately I still can't." He clearly saw that she was moved, but why didn't she agree? He was afraid that she had plans for the day. He had several plans in his mind, and he was so thoughtful. She had to accept his kindness. At home, he had arranged to take Yi Qian to a private restaurant in Beihai Park to eat authentic Imperial City cuisine. Then, he would take her to the courtyard's training field to see if she had improved in the few days that he had been away. This arrangement didn't seem to be enough to keep the little girl by his side. Therefore, he changed his strategy at the last minute and brought out the artillery shells and the military factory. The tactics were good, but the people they encountered were not ordinary. Xia Jinyuan was about to succeed, but in the end, he was told that he still couldn't go. Driving away, he experienced the feeling of sadness for the first time. The little lass was not only smart but also very determined. She was really not easy to coax. Yi Qian waited until his car was out of sight before returning to school. It was not even 6 o'clock yet, so he decided to go back to the dormitory and wash his face first. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't nervous when he was on the stage. This was his first time experiencing it, and a layer of sweat had formed on his back. His brain had been working at high speed for a few days, and it was indeed a little tiring, being together with such a dangerous man. While her whole body was tense, she had to constantly pay attention to his faintly discernible flirting, which could cause misunderstandings. Just like just now, he could have stayed away from her to talk, but he insisted on staying so close to her. He even bent down to let her be surrounded by his masculine scent. This made her even more reluctant to go. By the time Yi Qian got out of the car, there were already many students chatting. They were all contestants from various schools, and there weren't many of them, only 42 people. 6 of the 12 students from Fujian Town had already returned. The remaining 6 students were led by the students and teachers of Capital Experimental High School to a bus and headed to the orchard farm. Chapter 141. It was already lively in the car. Yi Qian, Gao Yang, and Wang Mo, a contestant from No. 1 Middle School, were already chatting happily with the other 9 contestants. This time, Yi Ying, who was not with Gao Yang, heard the low laughter coming from the back of the car. She, who was also chatting with a student, secretly pinched the leather seat with her sharp nails, a cold light flashing in her eyes from time to time. Occasionally, when she was chatting with students from other schools across the road, her gaze would intentionally or unintentionally fall on Yi Qian, filled with jealousy and malice. "Yi Qian, I'll let you be happy for now. You want to participate in the World Mathematical Olympiad? Are you worthy?" Yi Ying, who was gloomy all the way, suppressed the faint excitement in her heart and chatted happily with the students around her. Yi Qian, who was chatting with the contestants from No. 1 Middle School, had a faint smile on his face the whole time, as if he did not notice the gaze coming from somewhere. Occasionally, a cold light flashed in her deep eyes, and only then did he know that she had already noticed it. The gaze of hatred was so strong that it was hard for her to ignore it. When they arrived at the suburbs of Beijing, the sky was not completely dark. The students with cameras in their hands could not wait to take photos with Yi Qian and the other 12 contestants who had been selected. Ying glanced at them, revealing a hint of ruthlessness, and turned to leave alone. "Take a photo for me, take a photo for me." When they were outside, the distance between the boys and girls had increased imperceptibly. The boys from each school fought to be the first to take photos with Yi Qian, and some even left their addresses, hoping that they could often write to each other in the future. Of course, they were learning how to write to each other. After Yi Qian changed the trajectory of her life in this life, Xiuyan's demure brows had unknowingly become more cheerful. Regardless of whether it was a boy or a girl, she could communicate with all aspects, leaving a good impression in the hearts of her classmates as educated and well-mannered. Someone was sitting in a wicker chair on the leisure balcony on the second floor of the farm, watching the figures of the students playing in the forest. His gaze was not just focused on one spot, but also seemed to be searching for something. "Young Master Xia, you're really interested. Is the fun place in a farm with no women, no wine, and no food?" A slender man with a dozen cans of beer in his hand walked over. "I only took a vacation this year, and I can't believe I accompanied you to this extent." The man placed the beer on the table and pointed at the orchard with his slender hand. "I must have been out of my mind to agree to come to this kind of place where children come to play. I won't force you to stay. You can leave anytime." Xia Jinyuan picked up a can of beer, opened it, and took a sip elegantly. He glanced at his childhood friend who looked like a ruffian in his military uniform and said, "You're welcome. I won't see you out." After he finished speaking, his gaze was fixed on a slender figure. His gaze no longer searched but stopped with interest. The little girl was indeed very popular among the male students. Every male student was fighting to be the first to take a picture with her. That guy who even took out a pen and paper must have come prepared. Xia Jinyuan, who was still sipping his beer, stood up and leaned against the railing of the balcony. His piercing cold gaze fell on a boy who dared to raise his hand and put it on Yi Qian's shoulder. "You little brat, men and women shouldn't touch each other." As soon as he finished speaking, he saw Yi Qian say something, and the boy also smiled. The two of them took a picture shoulder to shoulder, a finger away from each other. Chapter 142. Xia Jinyuan nodded in satisfaction. Suddenly, he noticed that Yi Qian seemed to be looking in his direction. He quickly stepped back, intending to sit down on the rattan chair again. After taking 2 steps back, Xia Jinyuan turned around and stared at the man who was moving the rattan chair to the side, intending to make himself fall and embarrass himself. He raised his eyebrows and sneered, "Han Zheng, you're still playing this kind of game at your age. Don't you find it childish?" Han Zheng, 20 years old, held the military rank of captain. Like Xia Jinyuan, he was a proper third-generation member of the Red Army. They grew up together in the same courtyard, so they were familiar with each other to the point that they were young and had seminal emission. When he heard this, he raised his eyebrows as well, but with a wanton charm. Compared to your behavior just now, mine is not childish at all." He held an unopened can of beer in his hand as he casually stood there. Every part of him exuded a lazy and wanton air. "However, I'm really interested in this group of students. Which one of them are you interested in?" He didn't say boys or girls, but only students. Intentionally or unintentionally, he was making things difficult for his childhood friend. He even said that it was improper to touch. Since when did young Master Xia care about these things? How interesting! Xia Jinyuan glanced at his childhood friend who was like a walking pheromone. He curled his lips and didn't answer his question. Instead, he smiled faintly and said, "Do you know why I only brought you here? Do you still need to say it? Compared to the rest of them, I, Han Zheng, am handsome and elegant. Bringing me out is very impressive." "Yes, it is indeed very impressive." Xia Jinyuan looked at his childhood friend meaningfully, his deep eyes containing a dark smile. "However, it's not you who is impressive, it's me who is." Han Zheng elegantly adjusted his military collar and laughed even more happily after hearing this. "Of course, who am I, Han Zheng, and who can become my friend is impressive. Of course, being friends with young Master Xia is also very impressive." This was definitely the truth. Among all the influential families in the capital, who could compare to family Xia? Old Master Xia was one of the founding generals of the country. He didn't catch the hidden meaning behind Xia Jinyuan's words. His handsome face was still full of smugness as he continued happily, "Let's go, I'll give you more face. By the way, I'll introduce you to the little beauty who made you drive your car all the way to the suburbs of Beijing. You're jealous of a few young boys. There's no hurry. I'll take you there later." Xia Jinyuan calmly glanced at his childhood friend with a smile on his face. No matter how one looked at it, it seemed to be a meaningful smile. In the orchard, Yi Qian felt that his face was a little stiff from smiling. After taking a picture with the teachers from each school, Yi Qian decided to go for a walk by himself. Just now, he didn't know if it was his imagination, but why did it feel like someone was looking at him from the small building at the side of the orchard? After taking a few steps, he saw two boys pushing Gao Yang out from behind a fruit tree. When they saw him, they laughed loudly and said, "Yi Qian, come, let's take a picture together." Another student said, "Gao Yang, where did you hide just now? You didn't take a picture with our great beauty Yi Qian. Come, stand, I'll take a picture of the two of you first." Hearing the laughter, the teachers joked, "The two of you must take a picture together. You're from the same school, and you're senior and junior. Come, that boy over there, give me your camera. I'll take a picture of them personally." Chapter 143. Since even the teacher had said so, the students became even more excited. They did not notice that Yi Ying, who was holding 2 bottles of mineral water, was standing not far away and looking at them with a sinister expression. Soon, she composed herself and walked over with a faint smile. "Did you guys forget about me?" She handed the water to Gao Yang. "Drink some water. I heard your voice was a little hoarse just now." Oh. The students who had let go of the water seemed to understand something. They let out a long oh. Not bad. They even looked at Gao Yang ambiguously and blinked. When the teachers saw this, they shook their heads helplessly and changed the topic to the students' puppy love. At this moment, Yi Qian was really thankful that she had appeared in time. Amidst the laughter of the students, Yi Qian and the other 2 girls left, talking and laughing. After taking 2 steps, she turned back to look in the direction of the house. Her eyes moved slightly, and under the urging of the other girls, she turned and walked towards the stream. The little girl's eyes are so sharp. I was so scared that my heart skipped half a beat. Han Zheng, who was holding a pair of binoculars, patted his chest. He crouched down under the railing with a look of surprise on his face. "She doesn't look like a girl in her teens. Where did you find this child bride?" The great young Master Xia, who had countless young ladies from prestigious families in the capital, had actually taken a fancy to a little girl. This news was really King explosive. Xia Jinyuan looked at his childhood friend, who had been swept away by the little girl's gaze, and joked, "Your reaction is not bad. I don't usually see you being so attentive in school. It seems that the military is better. Your skills are getting better and better." Han Zheng had not graduated from military school and had been frequently sent to the grassroots of the military since this year. "Isn't it because I'm afraid of being discovered? In front of you, it doesn't matter whether I have an image or not. I just need to maintain my image in front of the other students." Han Zheng stood up nimbly and placed the binoculars on the table. When he sat down, his expression became more serious. "You really plan to join that team?" Commander-in-Chief Xia agreed. Whether it was his expression or his posture, they all revealed the sharpness of a soldier. "When I came back the day before yesterday, I just mentioned it to my dad, and he almost whipped me. It seems that if I want to go in, my dad will be a problem. Where there's a will, there's a way. But it's normal that Uncle Han doesn't want you to go with me." Xia Jinyuan had a faint smile on his thin lips as he slowly sipped his beer. His unhurried and low voice was suddenly laced with sternness. How dare a student go to a KTV so brazenly? Han Zheng, who gave you the guts to do that? His voice wasn't loud, but it was like a clap of thunder. Han Zheng's scalp instantly tensed up as he explained, "It's true that we're going to the KTV, but we're not going there to drink or have fun. F***ck, it was Wu Yunjia who caused trouble for me. I wasn't careful and fell into a trap. Forget it, let's not talk about this today. I'm going to the military academy because I want to join the brigade. My dad has to agree even if he doesn't want to." After saying a few words, Han Zheng seemed to realize something. His flirtatious peach blossom eyes instantly burst forth with a wolf-like ferocity. "Commander-in-Chief Xia agreed to let you go? Why did he agree so readily? The brigade was on the brink of life and death, and he actually agreed." The sky was already dark, and the laughter of the students could no longer be heard in the orchard. Xia Jinyuan stood up lazily and looked down at his surprised childhood friend. "Your goal for entering the military academy is to enter the brigade. Unfortunately, so am I," Xia Jinyuan said to Xia Jinyuan. Chapter 144. The difference is that I've already discussed it with Commander Xia before the exam. I'll report on time after a year of training in the army. Young Master Han, you're still too inexperienced. After saying that, she turned around and walked into the room, leaving behind a stunned first young Master Han. He didn't come back to his senses for a long time. "Brother Xia, young Master Xia, my young master, give me some advice. You have to give me some advice." A gust of wind blew past and Han Zheng, who was instantly sober, chased after him. "Give me some advice first, then go see your child bride, okay?" Xia Jinyuan's indifferent voice came from outside the room. "Child bride? I don't have the guts to do that. I'm just protecting the little girl. Let's go, young Master Han. If you want me to do something, you have to perform well. Treat the little fox as a child bride?" He really didn't have the guts. The little girl was his informant among the students. Not only did he apply for international police protection, but he also applied for personal protection. Now, whether it was in the country or abroad, protecting her was his current mission. When it was time for dinner, the restaurant of the farm was already filled with the aroma of the food. The local students from Beijing played the role of host and introduced each dish that was served. Xia Jinyuan, who was sitting in the private room, looked through the bamboo curtain at Yi Qian, who was clinking glasses with his classmates. He didn't touch much of the food that was served. "You're protecting her personally, right? Why do you look like you don't want her to know?" Han Zheng didn't touch the food on the table either. Following his friend, his gaze landed on the girl who scared him with just one look. Through the bamboo curtain, he could see more clearly at a closer distance. He smacked his lips and said, "She's really pretty." "Look," before he could finish his sentence, Han Zheng saw a long-haired girl sitting behind the girl smiling as the waiter served the hot soup. She stood up. She didn't know what happened, but as soon as she took a step forward, she suddenly fell towards the waiter who was holding the hot soup. Realizing that something was wrong, Han Zheng's expression changed drastically. He shouted, "Be careful!" With this loud shout, the waiter, who was completely unprepared, bumped into the bowl of hot soup that spilled out of the bowl and scalded his hand. At the same time, the bowl in his hand flew directly towards the back of the girl sitting at the other table. Yi Qian, who had his back to the waiter, seemed to be prepared. Accompanied by a loud shout from behind the bamboo curtain, Yi Qian stood up in a flash. At the same time, his slender hand grabbed the back of the chair. Under Yi Ying's gloating gaze, he gently lifted the chair to block the waiter. The disaster that would have befallen Yi Qian was instantly stopped by this chair. The entire process happened in the blink of an eye. The chair collided with the large bowl. Accompanied by the waiter's frightened cry, after the bang, there was the sound of porcelain shattering all over the floor. This scene happened so quickly that Ying, who still had a sinister sneer in her eyes, was completely caught off guard. A bowl of hot soup was directly poured onto her legs. "Ah!" she screamed at the same time. In her contracted pupils, she saw Yi Qian mocking her. It was as if he was saying that she already knew what she was doing. The soup didn't completely pour onto her legs. Because of Yi Qian's sneer, Ying simply bent over and squatted on the ground, crying out in pain. From the cause of disaster to the victim, the huge change in status made Ying, who was squatting down, grit her teeth until her facial features were hideous. Even like this, she actually managed to dodge it. Chapter 145. From the perpetrator of the disaster to the victim, the sudden change in status caused Ying, who was squatting down, to grit her teeth. Her facial features were contorted in anger. She actually managed to avoid it. The students in the cafeteria all stood up. Not only did the students react to the sudden turn of events, but the teachers as well. The two people who rushed out from behind the bamboo curtain quietly retreated. Han Zheng, who was sitting back in his chair, said in surprise, "You reacted so quickly. Have you practiced before?" "Yes, I'm pretty good at fighting." Xia Jinyuan, whose eyes were dark, poured himself a cup of tea. As he sipped the tea, he hid the cold glint in his eyes. If Yi Qian hadn't been on guard, that bowl of hot soup would have spilled all over her. Ying was really vicious. Han Zheng squinted his long, flirtatious eyes. After a while, he nodded and said, "Not bad indeed. Are you okay? Are you okay?" The girl sitting next to Yi Qian was so scared that her face turned pale. Her lips trembled as she asked Yi Qian, "Are you scalded? Let me take a look." She was so scared that she was about to cry. The other girl had a bad temper. She had already stood up and shouted angrily at Ying, who was still squatting on the floor, "Are you kidding me? The waiter even reminded us that hot soup is here. Do you have a brain? Do you know that this bowl of soup almost spilled all over Yi Qian?" The girl was from Beijing and spoke bluntly. Her tone was just a little harsh, but it was enough to make Ying, who had scalded herself, cry. Gao Yang walked over from another table. He pursed his lips and looked at the angry girl from Beijing. He squatted down and said to Ying, who had just screamed, "Are you scalded? Where?" He was the only one who was concerned about Ying, who was squatting on the floor. The rest of the students frowned and looked at the two of them. "It's fine if you scalded yourself, but don't implicate others." Seeing this, the girl from Beijing didn't say anything else. She turned and asked Yi Qian, "Why don't we go back to our rooms to rest first and wake up early tomorrow morning to play?" Yi Qian smiled at the girl and bent down to pick up the overturned chair. He walked step by step to Ying, who was still squatting on the floor and pretending to be the victim. He slowly bent down. "Ying, one who is unjust is doomed to destruction. You should really be glad that you spilled a bowl of hot soup. If..." In Gao Yang's tense gaze, Yi Jian had already gently moved to her ear. Her breath was cold, but her words were like needles. "If it was a knife or something like that, I'm afraid that one of your legs would be crippled." "Ying, oh Ying, what's a bowl of hot soup? I'll wait for you to use your ultimate move." Her voice was so low that only the two of them could hear it. Ying was frightened by the sharp voice. She suddenly panicked. She buried her head tightly and her nails pierced her arm. She endured it and didn't look up. She only cried out in pain. Seeing this, Gao Yang didn't blame Yi Qian. Instead, he said in a low voice, "Go back to your room and soak yourself in water. Otherwise you'll get blisters." After that, he carried Yi Ying horizontally and walked towards the dormitory. "Waiter, go get some burn ointment." Teacher Zhu walked over from the teacher's table. He didn't immediately chase after them. Instead, he walked to Yi Qian's side and patted her shoulder. Go back to your room and rest. I'll take care of this. They were having a nice meal, but this had to happen. Let's see how Yi Ying's burns are first. Chapter 146. Okay, I'll come over if there's anything. Yi Qian bowed slightly. There was no panic or shock on his face. I'm sorry to have made you worry. Teacher Zhu wasn't the only one to say this. The other teachers also comforted Yi Qian before going to visit Yi Ying in her room. Yi Qian thanked them one by one and looked in the direction of the moving bamboo curtain. If she wasn't mistaken, she recognized one of the two military green figures that rushed out of the bamboo curtain. Xia Jinyuan. I bet she found out about us. Behind the bamboo curtain, Han Zheng covered his face with his hands. She's already looked in our direction a few times. Young Master Xia, your secret protection plan has failed. Xia Jinyuan began to eat slowly. When he heard this, he smiled faintly. His handsome features were like blooming flowers, elegant and gorgeous. But she won't take the initiative to look for me, so it doesn't matter if she finds out. After hearing this, Han Zheng pondered. Why did it feel like something wasn't right? He didn't know if he was thinking about something wrong. Did it mean that the little girl didn't want to see the great young Master Xia? So, young Master Xia was secretly protecting her? Calm down. Is there a need to be so surprised? Xia Jinyuan tapped his slender fingers on the table twice. He calmly let his childhood friend know that Yi Qian didn't like him. That's why I said this little girl is interesting. Up until now, no one had ever disliked him. No one had ever piqued his interest like this little girl did. He wanted to see how far she could go. He also wanted to reach out and give her a hand when she needed help. Han Zheng closed his gaping mouth and stuffed a piece of vegetable into his mouth. Brother, don't blame me for saying this, but if you go on like this, don't go crazy. The little girl doesn't know anything now. Don't do anything bad. Oh my God, he was really worried. If he was interested in a little girl, no one would have to worry about him going crazy. How could a playboy like him linger over a flower? But young Master Xia was different. Everyone in the family was infatuated. From Master Xia to Commander-in-Chief Xia. In his mother's words, Family Xia was the best man in the world. Whoever married into a family Xia was destined to enjoy life. If the little girl didn't appreciate it and young Master Xia forced himself on her, just thinking about it made him worried. Xia Jinyuan was already too lazy to pay attention to his childhood friend who was immersed in his own imagination. With the little girl's skills, if he really wanted to do something bad, the silver wire wrapped around his neck. Moreover, she was only 14, and he didn't have a strange fetish like pedophilia. When Xia Jinyuan and another man, who walked with a flirtatious charm, appeared at the ground floor of the farmhouse, Yi Jian, who was also sitting on the balcony, did not sleep. She curled her lips slightly. Walking along the cobblestone path from the orchard, Xia Jinyuan stopped in his tracks and looked up at the balcony. Under the yellow light, his elegant and handsome face suddenly gave Yi Qian the illusion that he had traveled back in time. Bathed in the light, the man had handsome eyebrows and slender eyes. His eyes were as deep and vast as the blue dome of heaven. His thin lips curved into a faint smile. He was as elegant as an orchid and had a natural elegance. He was like the noblest person in the ancient imperial city, dressed in luxurious clothing. Chapter 147. Their eyes met. Xia Jinyuan placed his right hand on his forehead and waved it away gracefully. He smiled and said, "Good night, little fox." "Good night." Yi Qian lowered his gaze and looked at Xia Jinyuan's handsome face. His faint smile was as free as the wind. She waited until Xia Jinyuan entered the building before she sat back down on the rattan chair to admire the starry night sky. Her state of mind was tranquil, but Yi Ying's state of mind was like a hurricane passing through. She stared at Gao Yang with tears in her eyes. Suppressing the hatred in her heart, she asked in a hoarse voice, "So, you think I did it on purpose?" "Whether you did it on purpose or not, Yi Ying, it doesn't mean what other people think." Gao Yang took the ointment from the waiter and applied it on her reddened calves and insteps. "Ask yourself if you did it on purpose or not." Yi Ying was so angry that she laughed. "Why should I ask myself? I'm the one who's hurt, not Yi Qian." "Gao Yang, look carefully. I'm the one who's hurt. If I did it on purpose, why would I hurt myself? Damn it! Why is everyone suspecting me?" Even the boys who liked her remained silent in the face of the teacher's intentional or unintentional questioning. They didn't stand up to speak up for her. "I know. You think I'm just trying to win your trust, right?" "Ha ha ha, Gao Yang, I originally thought that you understood me, but now it seems that I was thinking too much." Yi Ying laughed self-deprecatingly. Her beautiful face was filled with desolation. Change, everything has changed. You've all changed. In the past, they only trusted her. But now, they only trusted Yi Qian. Even if they were the ones who got hurt, they would rather believe that Yi Qian was innocent and that she had ulterior motives. They've changed. They've all changed. Why did she still lose to Yi Qian even though she tried so hard? Why was it so unfair? Gao Yang pursed his lips and looked at the stubborn Yi Ying. He gently put down her legs and sighed after a long time. "It's not that we've changed, Yi Ying. It's just that you haven't recognized the truth. The old Yi Qian is no longer around. She no longer listens to you, and you're starting to worry." Gao Yang sat down in the chair and looked calmly at the girl who had tears in her eyes. "You're afraid that Yi Qian's light will overshadow yours. You began to worry that one day, everyone would think that Yi Qian was more capable than you, that he was more successful than you. That's why you started to panic. You started to go around trying to prove that you're better than Yi Qian." After all, he knew Yi Ying well. Every word he said hit the nail on the head, directly exposing the darkness in the depths of Yi Ying's heart. This caused her to panic instantly. Faced with the bloody truth, Yi Ying was so angry that her whole body trembled. Nonsense. Why should I be worried? I've always been more outstanding than her." "Shut up, stop talking. Don't say another word." If he didn't let her see the truth earlier, it would only have a deeper impact on her future. Gao Yang looked at her deeply, got up and closed the half-closed door. Outside the door, a few girls who were eavesdropping were caught red-handed and left awkwardly. Soon, Yi Qian found out about the matter. After hearing it, he smiled faintly and said, "I didn't expect Gao Yang to be so understanding. I really couldn't tell in the past." He really couldn't tell. But he knew that Yi Ying would definitely not be persuaded by him to come to her senses. Chapter 148. Because no one in this world knew Yi Ying better than she did. Yi Qian's guess was proven correct. It wasn't until 10 o'clock at night that the students returned to their dorms after playing poker. They saw the usually cold Gao Yang storming out of the room with a furious expression. Yi Ying's soft sobs could be heard from the room where the door was not closed. Yi Qian, who was about to go to bed, smiled lightly and didn't say anything about it. Gao Yang definitely wouldn't have an easy time tomorrow. Yi Ying was the type of person who would make everyone else uncomfortable as long as she was uncomfortable. Suddenly, Yi Jian, who had closed her eyes, opened her eyes. She said to the girl who slept in the single bed next door, "Do you know the girl who slept in the same room as Yi Ying? Why don't we just let her sleep with us?" If Yi Ying was going to cause trouble, she didn't want to implicate others. When the girl from the capital heard this, she thought it was a good idea. "Why didn't I think of that? If we combine the beds, won't the three of us be able to sleep together? She got out of bed, took off her shoes and walked outside. Wait for me to come back so we can move the beds together. Yi Qian agreed with a smile. When the two girls from the capital came over, she had already moved the bed. With one more friend, the three of them chatted until 1 o'clock in the morning before they fell asleep. Early in the morning, when Yi Qian came back from her run, she saw Teacher Zhu and a few other teachers from experimental middle school standing in the corridor with serious expressions. A student ran over from the orchard and said breathlessly, "No, we looked everywhere, but there was no one." Yi Qian's gaze turned cold and she quickly walked over. When she saw Teacher Zhu, she said in a hurried voice, "Yi Qian, did you see Yi Ying?" Yi Ying, who was supposed to be in the orchard, was missing. Just as Yi Qian said, if she was unhappy, she would make everyone unhappy. Nothing in the room was touched. Even the bed looked like it hadn't been slept in. The blankets and sheets were neat and tidy, without a single wrinkle. The disposable slippers and the things in the bathroom were untouched. It was as if no one had been in the room at all. Yi Qian stood there quietly, his gaze fixed on the pillow. Downstairs, Gao Yang, with beads of sweat on his temples, was surrounded by cold air. He turned a deaf ear to the teacher's call and directly rushed to the second floor. Teacher Zhu realized that something was wrong with Gao Yang and hurried up to him. Someone said, "Yi Qian is upstairs." This made everyone's heart skip a beat, and they all chased after Gao Yang. Hearing the commotion outside, Yi Qian stood beside the single bed where Ying used to sleep. When he moved the pillow away, Gao Yang rushed in with the morning fog. He asked coldly, "Did she come to see you last night?" "Shouldn't you be the last person to see her last night, Gao Yang?" His question made Yi Qian's eyes turn cold. After he moved the pillow away, he reached into the seam of the bed. Gao Yang, with a frosty look in his eyes, walked closer and handed a bottle of mineral water to Yi Qian. "I found 2 bottles like this by the stream. One is yours, and the other is the one Yi Ying drank from. When I left last night, Yi Ying didn't finish this bottle of water. And you didn't finish the bottle of water on the dining table." His words made the students who followed him into the room unhappy. "Hey, are you kidding me? What do these 2 bottles mean? So what if you found them by the stream?" Chapter 149. If he found them by the stream, then it proves that Yi Ying and I met alone last night, Yi Qian said calmly. It's normal for Gao Yang to make such a guess. She pointed at the mineral water bottles in his hand. One bottle should be in my hand, and the other bottle should be in Yi Ying's hand. Now that both of them are by the stream, it makes people think that Yi Ying and I went to the stream in the middle of the night. After all, both of us almost got into trouble last night. This was something that couldn't be explained clearly. It was just a simple setup, but it was enough to make her speechless. Even if the 2 girls who slept with her could prove that she slept with them last night, what about after she fell asleep? Could they prove that she still slept with them? When Gao Yang heard this, the coldness on his face deepened. She didn't sleep last night and now she's gone. Yi Qian, she didn't sleep last night? Did you see with your own eyes that she didn't sleep last night? Yi Qian laughed, and her cold eyebrows became a little more beautiful. You need to understand. Number 1. Just because the 2 bottles were together, it doesn't mean that we were together because you didn't see it with your own eyes. Number 2. You didn't see with your own eyes whether she slept last night, so you can't be so sure that she didn't sleep last night. It's the same as how my roommates can't prove that I didn't go out last night after they fell asleep. If you didn't see it with your own eyes, then everything you say doesn't make sense. Everyone present was smart, so they could understand what Yi Qian was saying. She made it very clear that the 2 bottles together didn't mean that she and Yi Ying had definitely met. However, Yi Qian couldn't prove that she wasn't with Yi Ying, So Gao Yang could assume that Yi Qian and Yi Ying met by the stream last night. Similarly, Gao Yang couldn't prove that Yi Ying didn't sleep last night in her room. The reason was the same: they didn't see it with their own eyes. Working with a bunch of highly intelligent students as teachers, it was quite stressful. What they were thinking was also what the students were thinking. Yi Qian walked over to Mr. Li and Mr. Zhu. He picked up a few strands of black hair from the side of the bed and said, "This is Yi Ying's hair. At least it proves that she slept on the bed. As for why she tidied up the room so neatly, we have to find her to find out. She had clearly slept on the bed, yet she wanted everyone to misunderstand that she hadn't." After realizing the deeper meaning behind Yi Qian's words, the expressions of the teachers and students changed slightly. Gao Yang clenched his teeth so hard that his cheeks were visible. He looked deeply at Yi Qian and said, "Sorry, I was too impatient." Then he turned and walked downstairs. His slender figure still looked somewhat young. At least, compared to the two soldiers who brushed past him, Gao Yang's back was so thin that it looked slightly frail. "Male student, why are you in such a hurry to leave? Come, let's have a chat." Seeing that they were about to brush past each other, Han Zheng instantly reached out and put his hand on Gao Yang's shoulder with an undeniable aura to make him stay. Dressed in a military uniform, Han Zheng put away his bone-chilling charm and looked full of military might. He smiled and said, "We'll leave together later. We still need you to bring us to the stream." Gao Yang wanted to resist, but when he calmed down and saw Xia Jinyuan standing at the side, he was slightly stunned. Wasn't this the young major that Yi Qian knew? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.